opening at 8:36 to
9:36.
9:36. Thank you. 6 o'clock. To discuss revenue and tax. I'm gonna hand it over to Village Accountant Michelle Pascalillo.
Good morning. Did everyone have a chance to at least take a quick peek at the attachments?
Yes.
So I guess let's do the general fund line by line, and we can work off of the one that's portrait. This way it has notes, and it'll help explain what a lot of those lines are. I just want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the revenue budgets.
This one?
Yes,
I
please.
didn't bring it in, or else it's stuck in there somewhere. I just need the portrait stuff.
Today's the
15.
Eyes of
Yeah.
March.
Eyes of March. Excellent day to do budget.
Okay, so, for right now, for illustrative purposes, I have the tax cap at the max increase. I think that if I heard correctly, the board's not sure that they wanna totally raise it. And we wanna try and get that down if we can. So let's walk through all the other revenue sources to see if we can increase any of these lines, or there's any revenue that the board's aware of that I'm not, and that can help offset the gap.
Can I ask a question right off? If we took the max,
Mhm.
what would the average homeowner, property owner realize in, is it possible to figure that out? I know assessments are different. And
Right, everyone has a different assessment. It's able to figure out if you choose an assessment, like I could do like a Forge Gate condo versus a house with, but I don't really know what the average assessment is. A lot of people, the houses are all different sizes in the village.
I was just thinking, when you talk about what our percentage of a person's real tax bill is, by the time they pay the 80-something% in school tax, a village tax increase, even when it's the highest, is a very small percentage of the tax bill,
Of the overall bill.
of the overall bill. So, even if, when we talk about raising them, it's nice to have some actual number so people don't freak out and think their tax bill, their entire tax bill is going up by that amount.
So if it was the max, so a typical condo, we're assuming no exemptions, so typical.
Store.
Star only applies to the school. A typical Forge Gate condo at the max would be an increase of $44 for the year.
Does put things in perspective, doesn't it?
And a house that's assessed at $180,000, which I looked at some houses. There's quite a few in the 170, 180, 190 range. Is $199 for the year.
So when you gave us the levy numbers the last time, last week I think it was, the maximum levy would be like 6.3% increase,
Correct.
and the tax rate attributed to that estimated was 4.7?
4.84.
484, got it. And I actually pulled my tax bill, because you mentioned it last week, and I couldn't answer the question for the school tax, though I should be able to. It was 62% for school, 20 for village, and then other stuff. Library, town, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, that's way down. Is that because of Butterfield?
I don't know, I just took my
When I was
tax
on the
bill
board
and
last time,
did
it was
Probably.
86%.
simple math. Not to bash the school too much, but 62 at my house wasn't 80.
Library, town, no fire district in the village,
But there's fireman service
but there's
award,
fireman service award.
which is on the village tax bill.
That's part of the 20%.
And that was mine. I don't know if that varies by house, but
Right.
that's just back of the envelope stuff.
So I would assume that your school tax has a star in it. You don't get a check, correct?
No, I don't get a check.
So those numbers are skewed because people that have bought their house within the past 7-8 years, they pay all their school taxes in full and then they get a rebate check. Star is no longer an upfront discount, so those numbers are skewed for a certain population. People that have owned their homes for over 7, 8, 9 years, whatever the Star was. I don't remember when they changed it. So moving on to the village revenue. So the first two lines are the total tax levy. Real property taxes, that goes for everything that the village needs money for in the general fund, and then this 18,200 is for the fireman's service.
Michelle, just the 1.856,
Mm-hmm.
is that assuming, basing that on the assessed value from last year?
No, the state calculates this number for us. It's based on the tax rolls from 2 years ago.
Because I'm thinking, I know we've talked about it with Butterfield, a lot of those haven't been assessed at full value, and they're rolling into it. There was a lot of them last year that were assessed at, it was like 52,000.
At 50, right. So this has this number, which is why, so going back to the tax levy, three things make up the tax levy. The tax base growth factor, which is where Butterfield comes into play. Allowable levy growth, which is 2% or inflation, whatever's less. And for the village this year, the carryover that we did not exercise last year. So our tax base growth factor is 1.0294, so almost 3%. And that's because of the rest of Butterfield's coming online.
So that takes into account then.
Mm-hmm.
the value.
Increasing some of those
Right.
condos that were at 50% in June of 2021.
And that's the number we looked at last week.
And so this 111,000 is the max that we can raise taxes total across the village. This is probably the last or second to last year that this number is going to be so high. It's definitely not going to be this high next year if we don't carry any money over and we, raise it all now. And unless there's some other kind of Butterfield-like development, there's going to be no more increase to the tax base. Butterfield might have a couple, one building with a couple spaces, but this is the whole medical buildings included, all of the condos, and it's at the mercy of inflation next year. So if inflation is 0, we can't increase our taxes unless we've had some kind of properties built or improved in the area.
So the new building will have retail and rental spaces. Are they taxed differently than the condo
That I'm
spaces?
not sure.
Because there's still one more, it's 6 units, it's not a huge number.
Yeah, but we won't see those on the
For a
tax
couple
roll,
of
years.
probably for at least 2 years.
Got it.
As well as the 3 houses on Paulding.
Oh, right,
The
right.
one house that's done, we might see that this year, a part of it. Certainly the other house that's being built, we won't see for
Right.
probably
And the one
at least
after that.
next year, maybe even the year after. And there's
Okay.
a third one.
So it's at a standstill time, usually like on March 31st, I think. And then the rolls are done in July, but our taxes are printed in June, so that's why we have to go on a 2-year lag.
Would that change, if our budget year were to, would there be an advantage to shifting our budget year to be in line with, well, no. The county does their budget in the fall, right? Yeah,
They operate January to December.
January to December, which means they're formulating their budget in the fall,
Mhm.
which would be complicated with, so, well, I guess would there be any benefit to shifting our year? I think you said that villages have options,
They have a couple options,
to be calendar year or
or
Spring.
certain fiscal years. A lot of villages in the state are on a fiscal year. They don't do January to December, but you can. But I think it's a long process to change that.
keep in mind when the elections were changed from March to
Right,
November,
right.
one of the
reasons
One of
was
the
to
reasons
get,
given was
yeah, to get more
to give
space.
to give trustees the opportunity to be familiar with the budget and be more prepared
Yeah,
for this.
which makes perfect sense, and that's why I
Yeah.
stopped myself in the middle of the question, thinking the fall would be a disaster.
The advantage, I assume, of keeping June first is we have more definitive information. The county has a budget, the town has a budget, if in fact we get anything from the town or the county.
True.
We have more solid information rather than speculation.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
state most likely will have a budget before we, if that means anything.
Yeah, the lag is the taxes, but the benefit you described outweighs the,
At least you know what you're doing.
yeah.
Hello?
Are, are these questions, maybe these are questions you can answer while we wait for Michelle. What are the two lines of fireman service awards? And I know that it's LoSAP, but why is it broken out in two like that?
Because there's
Different
what,
rates?
the LoSAP, there's the portion we pay,
Uh-huh.
and there's a portion we collect from Nelsonville and from Phillipstown.
And that's what
So
101
the second
is?
one, the 16,800, those are the contributions that we get from
Oh,
Phillipstown.
NVPT,
Yeah.
got it.
Yes, the total LoSAP is about, I think, 35,000 is what we're budgeting.
And can I keep trying to ask you questions?
Yep.
The average real property tax, average estimated, Catherine was asking about average before. What does average mean in this context of interest and penalties?
Interested, that's late fees?
People paying late.
Yeah.
So that's a chunk that get paid late, $9,000, right? Cause it's like a $400,
Yes,
Yeah.
and the way the penalties work, that if it's not paid by June 30th, come July 1st, there's a 5% penalty.
right?
And then 1% gets added each month after that through January. So if you don't pay by January, it's 11% penalty.
Got it. And franchises is.
That's the cable vision
Yep,
fee, so we get anywhere between 11, 12,000 a quarter from them,
so that's just the Cablevision frame, we don't have other,
correct?
okay.
So this is based off on a 3-year average. So police fees, typically we get, $5 here and there for doing abstracts and running reports. But if any large rec events needed to have a police presence, then we could budget here. But I think in the past, some of the rec events have been hiring their own, and then so that we wouldn't see the revenue here.
So what was discussed when the two events that are on the calendar were reviewed was some need, as I understood it, some need for uniform presence, and then the others would be private hire. So I would imagine there'll be at least one officer per event. And that's
Additional officer.
additional officer, yes. Sorry, thanks.
Okay. And that would be for, the Putnam County Wine Food Fest and,
Brews with Views,
Hops, is it?
yeah, Brews with Views,
That was
by
it.
Hops on the Hudson.
Hops.
okay, so,
And, yeah. I mean, that's the only thing on the calendar at this point, right? That I can think of.
Mhm.
okay, so this would increase a little bit, but not by much, cause one officer is roughly $35,
Yeah.
38, we charge
38.
38 an hour.
38. And then if it's an 8-hour day for 3 days, it's $900,
Okay. That's something.
something.
I hope that permit fees for building and fire will go up if we have more consistent coverage, but I wouldn't, obviously I wouldn't count on it.
We've been fortunate the last 3 years or so 4 years, that Butterfield has been a steady stream
Yeah,
of revenue. There is the new building that'll be going up.
yeah.
That'll probably, I mean, I can't see that being ready to go, permit ready, before June 1st. And there is the third house.
Both the houses haven't been started, so that'll be inspections.
Inspections it's the permit
It's
fees,
the permit
so
fees.
one of those houses, of the 3 houses that are there, 2 have already paid their permit fees.
All right, and then the inspections come out of the
Correct.
fees. Well, the other thing is if we're able to expand fire, inspections, which we should be doing. And do you have a number in here for short-term rental?
No, I do not.
That was my note at the bottom. It's like, where are those?
I mean, imagine that would be, I wouldn't count on that before summertime, by the time we get through modifying code.
So you're,
And we also have to look at the actual numbers that were set out.
What's the permit fee? I should know, I
$250.
paid it, $250.
so it's $250, and that's an annual fee.
Well, currently, it's an annual fee, yeah.
And then, is there an inspection fee on top of that?
Yes, but I don't remember what the number is, do you?
Well, it was the application fee, which is part of the
Right, that was, I think, 100.
100
Does that
or
sound right?
150.
So the inspection and the application fee are together? It's one number for the two of those things?
The application fee covers the inspections, and then there's the permit fee, which I believe is $250.
And can those be increased, or we only have to do that once a year with that huge list? Do it anytime you
Yeah.
so-called want?
Oh, the fee schedule?
Yeah.
Fee
Okay.
schedule can be modified by vote, because it's outside of the ordinance.
So let's assume short-term rentals happens. Let's assume there's going to be a degree of compliance. So would it be safe to say 50 units compliant
I mean,
over the summer into the fall?
potentially.
No,
Are there really that many?
Oh my god, there are
Oh,
way
yeah.
more
There
than
are
that.
100 in the
It-
village.
it's not a question of how many are there, it's a question of
Of how many
changing the
will-
code.
Right.
And
To get
in order to get there.
So that they can actually apply.
So keep in mind, I mean, public hearings, changing the code, getting with the lawyers, we're a long way off.
Well, that's why I was saying at least July, at least summertime.
We should be able to execute that by
Yeah, I
July,
mean, we've got,
right?
yes, Eliza and Catherine have been working on a draft, or Eliza has been working on a draft. We have a concept of where we're going. We need to have the public hearing that goes to the county, that process takes a couple months.
Even if it's September. I mean, I think
Yeah,
the
it's-
goal
it's
is to
some
get
number.
it
We can get it
before the
done within a
fall
year.
leaf
Oh,
people
for sure,
come up.
for sure.
Not to categorize
Say it
it.
again?
The goal is to get it in at no later than the fall, people
Yeah,
coming up to
no,
look at the leaves.
I would really hope to get it done in the summer.
So if you had 50 people times 350, 17,500, it would be safe to say 17 grand, wouldn't it?
15 to
15
be
grand?
conservative.
I'd go to 15 just to be conservative. But
I mean, I think
How
if we're
many
gonna,
people
I'd like to think it was
actually
gonna be 20.
applied under the current law?
4.
4,
Four.
and only 3 were accepted.
Which makes me nervous of why people aren't doing it. So even if you change the rules, are they still not gonna do it?
Well, there are lots of reasons that it was sort of it became a civil disobedience, basically, with
Well,
STR owners deciding not to apply because it was so complex.
The code was impossible for half the people to comply with because it just didn't apply to them. Like if I'm 200 feet away from the neighbor who has one, then I can't apply. So there
I'm
were,
so nervous to put in revenue
Yeah,
that's not, I mean, nothing's ever guaranteed.
you don't believe in us. You don't
Not
think we can
that.
do it.
well, you don't have a
I'm a
law yet for us to
conservative.
figure out
No,
what
understood.
revenue we're, I mean, so you're trying to project revenue based on what exists now, but if the goal is to change the law and the code to make it more palatable for people to apply, then what exists now needs to change. So I don't think it makes sense to make revenue projections on what is.
What happens when we make revenue that we weren't budgeting for, and we have suddenly $15,000 that
That's a good,
doesn't
We
have.
do a happy dance
that's a good
Yeah, be
problem.
happy.
That's a better problem to have than
than being
sitting
short.
here in April going, we're $15,000 short, we have to cut somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
So I get the point, and I don't disagree with anybody on that point. I think we, as a board, need to have a philosophical conversation sooner than later. Do we want to execute some form of short-term rental law within this calendar year?
Yes.
That's a yes or a no. If
Yeah.
it's a no, then forget it. Don't even waste everybody's time. Don't waste your time and call it a day. If it's a yes,
Give me a deadline so I can.
then
do a
we
draft.
back in, because if we can't get something like that executed in 6 to 7 months, then we probably all should find something else to do.
Well, what we're, you're exactly right.
I don't mean to be harsh,
No, no,
No,
no, it's
no,
the
you're
truth.
absolutely
What
right.
we're
but you
waiting on.
gotta start with the philosophical first question.
Yeah, well, I think we're all there at yes. What we're waiting on is the village attorney to give us moratorium language that we can take to a public hearing. And I just requested it again. That's the
Do we have to
bottleneck.
moratorium it to modify it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, probably not, but it's cleaner because we're not able to enforce it as it is. So we have to be working with a law in the books that we can't enforce. It seems sort of senseless.
I agree, I just thought we could sort of,
So that
it's
can-
like traffic fines, you know,
Mm.
if they don't pay them.
I mean, I can ask the question. That's the way he recommended us to go forward, was to call a pause while we work on the new one, so that we're not vulnerable at the same time to challenges because we're not enforcing the existing law. And that made sense to me.
Okay.
So for this exercise, then I would actually agree with you not to include it,
Thank you.
with a caveat. 'Cause I'm gonna have asterisks everywhere, if you haven't figured out by now.
With an asterisk and a little word, hopeful asterisk, okay. All right.
Bearing that in mind when we get to the tax levy percentage. Asterisk.
I'm an asterisk
So
guy.
then the next one is vital statistics. This is copies of birth certificates. They ebb and they flow, just an average 2,400. They increased, a year or two ago with the enhanced ID, but that's
Yep.
been put off. But so many people got their copies already that I don't think we're going to see such a heightened increase anymore.
And is this something that over time will decline because the births at Butterfield Hospital will have declined, right? I mean, you come here if you were born at Butterfield,
Right.
right? So over time, that will not be a task regularly conducted in the village.
Quite a few years out. I
Yeah.
mean, it hasn't
Well,
been
ni-
closed a long
93,
time.
93, I think, right, was the last birth, or 92, so it's,
Before my
So
time.
even if somebody needs it up until their 70s or
Yeah.
whatever.
People now, passport, new driver's license, you need it to
Yeah.
get the new birth certificate, so.
And even people that have the originals, they need the newer version of a birth certificate, so that's, been coming in too.
yeah,
So parking lots, my understanding is 40 Main is a deal been made for, $20,750.
the papers have not been signed,
Okay.
they're in the process of drawing up the papers, but an agreement has been made.
Okay.
They accepted the amount we put forward. I would like us to revisit, I don't understand how the Hudson House lease is structured. I know they pay a rental fee and they pay the tax, but I don't know when that was last thought about in terms of
So
value.
the number was redone 4 or 5 years ago on a 3-year sliding scale, so we're about a year and a half out. November of a year and a half ago was the end of the raising of the 3-year original lease agreement.
Do you have that? You have the lease, right? Somebody has one of you has the lease up clearly.
So it's a 3-year lease and we're halfway through.
No, it was a 3-year lease, we're a year and a half past the end date
So
of
they have
the,
no agreement conceptually.
I think in the lease it, just keeps going, but no, dollar amount changes.
That needs to be looked at.
And they have that lease because they needed it as some port of approval?
They
Or is it
needed-
just that we negotiated because we had
They
extra
needed
space?
parking, so it was a condition of their site plan approval that they needed a spot for parking.
Okay,
Same kind of deal.
yep,
So for Hudson House, I assume that there'd be no increase at this time. But if there is, we can up that a little bit.
I mean, I'm sort of, as I think about kind of legislative calendar going forward, that's one of the things that we do need to look at, because it's, you know, the value of parking in the village increases.
Yeah, how many spots does Hudson House have from us?
I don't know,
It's a
not
decent
many,
size.
it's not 20.
No, it's that small lot right after, behind the boat club.
That little thing?
Yep,
Okay, so
On
it's
New
like,
Street.
it's small.
it's
5,
like,
6, 5, I mean, it's not,
oh, it's not, is that small?
I think so, I don't
I
think it's
thought
too much
that
bigger.
was like
I thought
at
they-
Might
least
have-
10-car
It
lot.
might be 10.
Maybe,
Cause
Right.
they're all perpendicular. Well, we should look at that and see if we can negotiate the contract to be the same rate that we're charging 40 Main.
I don't think it's paved down there either, so that might be something to
Slight
consider.
difference, okay.
So this 5,500 is just the rental for the parking, the taxes are separate.
And what, do we know the value of the tax bill they pay?
Between all three of them, I have it, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, what do you mean all three of them?
So
Hudson House.
they're paying school tax,
Oh,
village tax,
yeah.
and town tax.
So I mean, that obviously increases the value of the lease, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the value of the parking. Okay, parking meter fees.
So, for the lot and Fair Street, you know, I took the average, on what's been parking for the past couple of years. We increased the fees, so I increased the average, it's $2 on the weekends, $1.50 during the week. You know, I upped it, I think 75%, assuming weekend parking, 25% during the week, to come up with 46. And then Main Street parking is a number that I have in here, but I'm very reluctant to have it in here because it's, again,
Not implemented yet.
it's not implemented. I assume that it would be implemented by December. And that knowing that, you know, January, February, March, April are slower months when it's cold, that not all the spaces would be taken, so I came up with 7,000, but like I said, I don't know where we are with how close we really are to implementing Main Street parking for the weekends. I think the residential part is the holdup.
Right, but I think Bugsy and the boys could get those signs up,
But I don't think it's the signs, it's figuring out the residential parking.
an actual permit passing out
You can't
and getting people to
implement
pay
Main
for
Street
it.
without implementing the residential, and if the residential's not done,
Right.
again,
Takes
how many
time.
months is that gonna take? I have it in here for December, much smaller amount than the STRs, but
Did you factor in Mayor's Park in your Fair Street lot? Is that all inclusive?
yes.
Okay. And when Marie did her detailed analysis in the fall, do you remember what the occupancy was of the Fair Street lots? I know she did some kind of crazy calculation that was so detailed.
it was,
Like roughly, I'm just thinking in my head of capacity.
There was a spreadsheet of,
I would have to go back and look, it was a day by day and look at it. Monday through Thursdays is very low.
Right.
Weekends is very high. And there are sometimes at weekends we're probably at 90-95% capacity consistently
Got it.
through the day. It's a little bit different at night, obviously, but
And that's enforced by the anthropologist who's leaving? He enforces that lot?
On the weekends, yeah.
Okay, so if we
Yeah.
expanded that person,
no.
not that person, the
No,
position.
but Nico, that position, no, doesn't enforce parking at the
oh
municipal
no,
lots.
cause it's
The
the,
police department does.
Oh, really?
Yes,
That's
Even on the
by-
weekends?
yes.
By law or by
Well, because they have,
choice?
Nico doesn't have access to the meter information, the police do. Because you need to have the app.
On the,
Yes, so the police are the ones who are hand out tickets there.
could that could that shift to the new Nico? Is there a reason that Nico wasn't given access?
Well, it didn't exist. I mean, it was a different program.
But he used to. He never did that lot?
No,
Maybe we could
So
look
going
into that so
forward-
that the new
Yes.
Nico can access, because then I think compliance probably would be a lot higher.
Well,
Because the police are
otherwise,
probably busy doing all kinds of stuff on the
Right.
weekends.
otherwise a parking enforcement person is not gonna be able to give any tickets.
Well, he chalked.
No, when
Oh, yes.
we have meters, they won't be able to, so that won't be.
Okay. So it's safe to say this number then is within the realm of, with the pluses and the minuses and,
Assuming that that 7,000, if Main Street parking goes through by December.
Okay.
Is that a realistic goal?
I mean, I think we really, there are a number of things we have to press really hard on to push up revenue, and parking's one of them.
That's
You know what we need to do
low-hanging
is,
fruit.
as we're taking notes on all of these elements, we need to think to calendarizing, sort of the plan of attack for what we hit next.
So large events, we have to add,
yeah, I would just bump that to 9,000,
Which,
yeah, we
larger
already
events.
know.
Park and rec, or?
park and rec, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Has the hops or the brews been approved, or is it going to be?
Yeah.
It's been approved.
Now, if we collect that money now, does that get applied to this year, or does it get applied to next budget year?
I would defer it because the
Okay.
event's next year.
dockside fees, we're unlikely to have fees coming in until potentially September. So I wouldn't feel comfortable, given all the unknowns on that project, putting anything there.
And what was a dockside fee? Like what was something in the past that we got
Is
money
that
on
a Send
dockside?
Festival or
That's
something
the
like
only
that?
thing that's really been down
Weddings.
there,
Oh,
from one
okay,
wedding. So
got it.
But
Yeah.
that park is a mess, so. We'll be
That would be
waking
a
it
great wedding site to market,
up. Mhm.
Yes, it would.
once it's finished.
Yes, it would.
Zoning and planning board fees, just looking at trends on those, they're $50 an application. Same thing with historic board, those are 30 an application, and there's usually one public hearing.
Planning board's only had 2 applications in the last year?
They don't have many,
Yeah, that here.
Okay.
Much to do.
it's really just Butterfield
It has
and
been
Market
Butterfield.
Street,
Well,
which
it
has
had-
been
it had-
done.
Planning board, 40 Main, and Butterfield, I mean, that, yeah,
Right,
that's.
I mean, we don't have a lot of developable parcels, that's
Yeah.
just the truth.
What about marathon?
Well, marathon eventually, whenever that goes forward, yeah.
But that's not happening in 12 months, so that's why it's so small here.
Yeah, okay.
Fire protection services, this is the portion that Phillipstown and Nelsonville, contribute, to keep the firehouse, to give them their, budget request.
Wait, which line are you talking about?
Fire protection services, Phillipstown and Nelsonville.
But what's AED grant?
We had that in the past, we don't have it anymore.
What was it?
We got a local grant to buy 2 new AEDs.
Oh,
Cruise, yeah.
Yes.
thank you, that thing.
Yes,
Are these agreements done? Meaning, are these numbers, like what percentage of accuracy would you say these 2 numbers are?
They got negotiated in the fall, right? Or Phillipstown.
Phillipstown is in the budget.
Phillipstown is low.
Well, you have to take into account, there's 10,000
Okay, the low
And
step.
for
Okay,
the low
yeah.
step and 6,500 on Nelsonville side.
So Phillipstown went through its budget cycle
Nelsonville's doing theirs
in
now.
the fall, and Dave negotiated this number,
So
and then
it's
Nelsonville
100%.
does when?
Now,
Now.
Phillipstown is gonna give the village a total of 60,000 in this year. And we're gonna ask Nelsonville for a total of 37,700. And this has been consistent with when, the fire protection agreements were redone a couple years ago. It ends up being that Phillipstown pays 29.5%, Nelsonville pays 18.5%, and we pay 52% of the cost to run the fire department. So that's their electric, their LoSAP, their workers' comp, doesn't include capital improvements. But if their toilet breaks, it would include minor repairs like that.
So when you said 37.7, you were looking at this 31 plus the
The
service award?
64.75.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what's refuse garbage service, other government?
That's the 7,500 that the county
The
used to
county
give us.
withdrew, okay, well, maybe we can find a way to get some of
To
that
go
again.
back to the fire protection quickly, so that we have it in the budget now, and we can talk about our expenses, we'll have to decide, what we're comfortable with. So the fire department's gonna ask us for a budget increase probably in October. We can try and budget on the expense side, they asked for 4% the year before, and 3% the year before, so I built in 4%. But it's up to the board to decide what they're comfortable with including.
What line are you looking at right now?
I'm talking generally
Oh,
about
generally,
fire
okay.
protection services.
Those expenses.
And with that request, we get financials and all that kind of stuff that
Yes,
justifies the request?
yes.
Okay.
I have a 4-year history if you're interested. Highlighted with
It's
the
written on
changes.
napkins, but it's,
That works.
it is.
It comes out of QuickBooks, it's just a different report every time.
When we do that exercise with them, I think we should actually put a new lease together, because
I
as
agree.
I read it, it's expired.
Mhm.
Some people think it just keeps going, it doesn't read that way,
No,
so
it
I think we
doesn't.
should just have a lease together and whatever it is, and it's clear, it's written in English.
And an
And
actual,
everybody knows what their responsibilities are.
and a lease intended for the type of use that it is.
So then, interest and earnings, this is just an estimated bank interest. The rental of real property, this is new income for the boat club. It's $1,000 a month right now.
And they paid that up front, right? So we'll get it again next spring, midway through our budget year. And how long does it stay at 12? 2 years?
3, I
I thought it was
think.
3
Three.
years.
They paid the whole thing up front.
The whole 12 months, not the whole lease.
Right, that's right.
Permits, other permits, so C Streak, is C Streak happening?
I just wrote to them yesterday and said, eagerly awaiting a proposal. So I'm trying.
So this is another number that, it's in there, but, so pre-COVID, C Streak came all the time. They missed a year, they came last year, but now they're going through whatever they're doing, like reconfiguring
Yeah,
their
the
structure.
restructuring the business.
I expect that they'll be wanting to come definitely the fall. That's just a
Yeah.
great revenue stream for them. They may even be proposing to come through the summer, but that'll be more of a village conversation. But I feel like we can rely on them for at least the fall revenue.
That was the impression I had when we met with them,
Yeah.
that they were focused on the fall for sure and contemplating trying things out in the summertime.
Parking waiver fees, I never budget for them because you don't know when that's gonna happen. Fines and forfeited bail, this is all the income that the court brings in, whether it's any kind of tickets that are written, after the state takes their portion. This is the net revenue to the village.
Who sets the fines? We do or the state?
New York.
I think it's a
It's
combination,
a combination,
depending on what it is.
but it's all
for.
code-based, whether it's our code or state code.
And vehicles and traffic and criminal are different origin.
Sales of real property,
We have one right now, but it's gonna be tiny.
$15.
Yeah,
Well,
it's 656 square feet at $4.65 a,
yeah, what they say yesterday, 3,500 or 3,000?
what about Riverview for 3,000?
that's it,
That-
that's
that's
what
the
we're
one.
talking about.
That'll be in this year though, right? It's gonna
Well,
happen.
Well-
it depends on how quickly he gets together what he needs for sale. He's gotta do meets and bounds and,
I think that's something that we could look at June 1st. Net revenue for next fiscal year.
3,000 next year would be helpful.
Okay. Throw it in.
By the time, he has to get his meets and bounds, his
Right.
the information to us, we send it over to the attorney, it doesn't get turned around quickly. We could easily stretch this out for 2 months.
And does a sale of village property go to the county planning board? In the
No.
way, no, okay. Not planning board, but planning department.
Do we have any excess property that's on the rolls that nobody thinks about or cares about that we could just get rid of?
I would
Maybe-
love. We did that
The
last year
Stoops.
with Moffett Road. That
Oh, we
was
did
like
do it
20
already.
Well, we didn't look at the
Not-
rolls,
not
but
the
we
Stoops.
offloaded, it was $20,000 property.
Outside of the village. There, at some point, I think it would be beneficial to do an all-in, identify, what's the word that I want? Identify all of the Main Street parcels and side street parcels where private property is on village property, and go in on a one sale with one legal fee and get it done. I don't know how that could work, but it seems like there would be efficiencies in doing it all at once.
The gun amnesty. Just-
Right, well,
Yeah, but-
surveying is what I'm,
Yeah,
the
well,
word I was trying to think of.
yeah, but you couldn't do
That's a process.
one
Not
sale.
one sale, cause it's
Because-
many
No, it's not
different
one, I'm
property
sorry,
owners.
I mean, do it as one process. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, but it
I mean, if you do it at one
seems like it would
time,
clean it up,
it would be,
it's a project.
because it's still individuals, no matter what, at the end of the day, it's an
They
individual
may or
sale.
may not take it.
Yeah.
On the other side, there are some Village of Cold Spring properties that could be looked at. They're on the tax rolls. I never look at them because we don't pay taxes on them because we own them. But there is a page or two of village-owned property.
There's a couple of small lots, like at the corner of Mountain
Oh.
and
Yeah.
B, that is not a buildable lot. It, for all intents and purposes, is the side yard of the lanes. We pay to maintain it, and it's just sitting there. There's one at the big curve of Grandview and West Belvedere. That's, again, too small to be a buildable lot, but just sitting there. I don't know if property owners on either side would be interested in acquiring it, but yeah, we should look at that list.
Yeah, so let's look at the whole thing, including,
Can you put that on your list to email me to send it to you?
I
I'm
mean,
making a list too.
as part of the dam review, is there any excess land that we don't need as part of the dam function? I have no clue.
Could be, the bigger issue
Does the
with that is the
wastewater
reverse.
plant have a property around it that isn't necessary for the operation of the wastewater? I have no idea.
The dam is kind of the reverse.
I would agree with
That between us and the dam is property that someone else owns that we need an easement to cross. So I think everything should be on the table to look at.
Okay.
For all the configurations.
Right, that's later in the year.
Yeah, but the water
Yeah,
plant,
for
I
sure,
think we
but
already
to
have
your
an
point.
easement.
What?
The water plant, I think there's one property that we already have an easement with, and they get free water for life.
Oh, the Lashinju.
Yeah.
We're
give
talking
us
about
access.
general fund, so we'll move on.
Okay.
Right, sorry. But we were talking about real property, Michelle. Sale of equipment.
So, sale of equipment, we cleaned out the highway garage and
But
that was the
what-
one thing.
What is this thing that keeps showing up on the highway report about
The
a
rec report?
shed that the trustees are,
That's on
the
the rec
rec-
report.
the
I've
rec
seen
report, that the trustees are cleaning out? I don't know what we're talking about. Are we talking, is that
There's
still
a-
the electric
there's a-
car?
There's a mayor's park shed, but I thought that that's what Bugsy cleaned out when we did this auction.
I thought so too.
I guess we have to go down and look at it.
I think part of it was cleaned out. They cleaned it out and said, okay, this is what we're gonna put up for auction. And they did. I think most of the stuff got sold. There were 16 items on there. I think just about everything.
So, I mean, there's the potential when we do fleet assessment that there might be, for highway, that there might be some stuff, I don't know how much value it would be.
Well, they
Well-
got rid of everything that,
No, I mean the current fleet stuff.
There's a garbage truck,
That's gonna bring something.
of scrap metal. I think there's the compactor from the garbage truck that he smacked.
We're looking at $5,000 at the end of the day, with all the junk floating around.
So two garbage trucks. Cause there's the one that was in the accident
There's the one that was in the
and the one
accident.
that puked. And what's the compactor is a separate piece outside of the truck?
Well, the compactor
is what actually
Crushes
Yeah.
crushes the garbage, and
As I look at the Royal garbage truck down there.
that could be put on any truck that meets the specific weight. Like, that's what we did at one point. We didn't buy a new truck, we bought a new compactor.
Oh, so we have a compactor to sell, all right, so maybe that is $5,000 or something.
And it's newer than,
Do you feel comfortable putting some amount in for sale of equipment?
If we're really gonna sell it.
If we're not gonna use it,
Why
get
don't we
rid of
keep
it.
Yeah,
That's my premise.
I
If
agree.
And I
there's a
think the
nail
whole-
laying on the side of the road that we don't need,
Get rid of it.
get rid of
And
it.
that
Either give it
auction
away or
company
sell it.
It worked because we don't pay any fees. Whoever buys the stuff from us
I'm-
pays all the fees.
I can't believe the condition of things that actually got bought. That yellow truck, that got any money, shocked me, so. Then
People
why
buy
the
all
metal
kinds of
alone?
Well, didn't they say there's like, if you go to South America, they're using our fire
One of
trucks?
the fire trucks, yeah. And-
So,
in
if
Chile.
somebody can make it work somewhere with bubble gum and shoestring.
So maybe one of us can be the disposal of excess assets.
What did you put
You
in?
sound very eager about that. Would you like to be that guy?
I'll be that
He
person.
loves garbage.
As long as I hate garbage. I just got
It
handed
just
garbage.
keeps coming to you.
What does insurance recoveries mean?
I went to
Claims.
Staples.
So that insurance recoveries would be, if the insurance company's gonna pay for us for damage to a vehicle or any property damage that we make an insurance claim on.
How is that income if it's replacing what was damaged?
Because everything has to be an income and an expense.
So it's just gonna get balanced out on the
Yep,
other side.
it washes itself out. So, to take a quick step back, so here, we have refund of prior expenditures, miscellaneous revenues, and never budget for them because you don't know what's gonna happen. They're usually peanuts. Maybe we got a $20 for a settlement or something. I don't know, somebody sued Staples and they gave us 7.5 ounces of hand sanitizer instead of 8, and someone did a class action settlement. Here we go, miscellaneous revenue, $20. So at the bottom of this line, so that's this big chunk in the middle is your departmental income. And then you move on to the 3,000s, and that's gonna be your state income.
And we're adding 14 to that 328, 3,
5 for the,
5 and 9?
We're
And
at
three
Oh, at the
3 and
9.
900. I have a running
So-
total.
Okay.
5, 6, 7, 8, 17, 18 so far. So now we're moving on to state revenue, and that's the 3,000s. So the AIM funding's been the same for years. It was talked about being cut in the past, and it wasn't. So we just keep budgeting for it because it's in the executive budget. The budget gets adopted on April 1st. So we'll know before we adopt our budget at the end of April if the state has made any significant changes to our assumptions.
I'm sorry that I have to ask a super basic question again. Can you remind me what AIM stands for? Or what it is?
It's
American infrastructure.
No. it's basically aid to municipalities.
Oh, okay.
Aid intermunicipality, sound right?
Aid incentive
Like
to
that.
municipalities.
That's all we get from New York State.
Yeah, it was set many, many years ago, and it's just been a carryover number. There's no formula. The state made it one year, and it's been the same for everybody. On the flip side, on the school side, you have formulas, and it changes every year. For municipalities, the state uses this number year over year over year. The mortgage tax comes, it comes from the county, but it's a state tax. I use 30,000 as the average, although last year it was high with all the influx
Nothing
of
left
sales.
high right now. Yeah.
I'm not comfortable raising it for the anomaly. If we get any state aid grants, they would show up here, which we've had in the past, and that's why there's blank numbers. 6,500 is the balance of the NYSERDA contract, assuming that we don't spend much now and we do it all after June. And then CHIPS, PAVE, EWR, comes from the state. I assumed funding would stay the same that they gave us last year, although they're proposing to increase CHIPS.
Yeah.
So when the state budget gets adopted, then the transportation does a worksheet, and I can go online and download what our actual allotment would be. Usually it's right before we adopt the budget, sometimes it's after.
So this number could increase.
It could, but then on the flip side, I would just increase the expenses because they're a 1-to-1, so it's a net impact on the budget. Second page, so 4,000 is federal aid. We don't have any right now. This would be FEMA or ARPA, but we're assuming right now that most of the ARPA funding will go to the water.
Well, we have to have a conversation, cause
Yes.
we've been pledged, the county has pledged to roughly double what we got directly.
Okay.
And that as part of the state of the county, they're taking 5 million from their 19.1 million and 5 million from tax overage, sales tax overage, building a $10 million fund and then distributing it by population proportion per capita, thank you, to municipalities, so it roughly works out to about what we got before, what we got
So-
directly,
The county would be giving the village roughly $200,000.
roughly 200,000.
And when would that?
That's
money
not
be
clear
coming?
yet, so, and also, it's a proposal right now, it has to go to the legislature, and the legislature has to pass it, and I think she said it wouldn't go to the legislature until May. So we're not gonna know this, we're not gonna know before budget time.
Yeah.
But we can't list, why isn't what came to us directly listed here?
If I listed it in the general fund, then I would have to, I can list it, tell me into the general fund and then going out to the water fund, but I don't wanna add
Oh, because
$100,000 here when it's not, if we're not gonna use it here in the general fund. And we're
Right.
gonna use it for a capital project, so we can't use it to balance the budget anyway, so for this conversation, it would be a wash. Whenever we realize the revenue, we realize the capital expense.
Well, and we have a sense, I think, that there is high demand in water infrastructure to use that. So if as part of public discussion of how to use that $200,000, the board determines that some portion of it should go to something that isn't a water initiative, how do we then, can we move it out back into general?
Yep.
Okay.
We could do transfers or budget amendments if we have to.
Okay. But we leave it,
I'll talk to Jeff and I'll see if we can get ARPA on the calendar for one day before, the end of April.
So if I understood it correctly, the ARPA county, state of the county thing that Eliza was working on, admirably, by the way,
Yes.
some portion of that is ARPA, but some portion of it was sales tax growth, right?
That's right,
They
there's
made
a
a-
dollar for dollar match.
Right, so it would seem to make sense that the sales tax part should go to the general fund and handle our general needs. And the ARPA stuff, which is dam related, should go to the water fund.
Oh, that's an interesting
In theory.
concept.
So, yeah, cause if you're getting, and I don't know the numbers, you do.
It'll be $100,000 each about.
Right, so if you got $100,000, which is for sales tax replacement, personally, I think that should go to your general fund, which should cover your general expenses, because your general fund is what's funding your sales tax related infrastructure needs, developments, wear and tear, foot traffic, crazy people yelling at people, that kind of stuff that you have to incur an expense for.
The caveat there would be if the 100,000 is a one-time influx of revenue, then we would treat it as we would use it for improvements and
Right.
not to balance operating.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but that frees money up in that other pool to deal with longer term stuff. It frees money, frees general fund up, I'm not sorry.
I just wanna
articulate.
make sure we're not banking on that being reoccurring and,
Right.
increase reoccurring expenses.
We can't bank on it being reoccurring.
Exactly. I just wanna,
But in theory, to me, that would make sense to do it that way.
but we
Yeah.
can't put it in the budget at all because we don't know what the county's gonna do.
Do we know philosophically if the new person running for county executive's in favor of her proposal? Because he is going to be the county executive?
It doesn't, well, because from my understanding with speaking with Mary Ellen Odell, was if she and if the legislature votes it in this year, it is set. And they've set it up that way so that the next people who come in can't just change things immediately. It'll take them, 6 to 8 months to change it again if they want to, but she's expecting that it'll be set in and voted upon before that new person comes in.
Right, not till January.
Right.
I mean, so the follow-up here is, what's the timeline? What degree of certainty post-legislative conversation? And when do we expect it to come? And it follows the same timeline. They are following the same timeline we are in terms of reporting planned use out and project planning.
I'd be just curious if the new county executive is adamantly against it, does the legislature kowtow to him because Mary Ellen Odell is a lame duck county executive and it becomes a political thing? I don't want to annoy the new guy that I have to learn to live with. I don't, this is just politics.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of this.
Well, hopefully, as Eliza said, hopefully it's settled before.
Okay, good.
That's the goal.
Good.
And
Should
she
be the
said
right-
it looked like it would be like 2 to 3 months because it's gotta go through a couple different boards, but they have this much time to make these
Good.
kinds of decisions.
Good.
So fingers crossed.
So then, the 5,000s are all interfund transfers. So fund balance is how much we wanna allocate for capital projects. Water and sewer, in the past, the water and sewer fund have shared some of their revenue with the general fund to help offset some administrative shared services. This number was higher a couple years ago. I've been bringing it down, and I think 18 is a little more comfortable number for keeping all the funds in balance, because while water and sewer might need the money, general fund might need it too, so I don't wanna totally get rid of it. And we do have a lot of shared services for water and sewer. Like Anne's paid out of the general fund, but she works on water and sewer. Police is paid out of general fund, but you could say that like in an emergency, the police have to handle water and sewer breaks and things like that. So 18,000 from each fund to handle shared services, like to help offset the cost.
So it's a legitimate transfer, it's
Yes.
not just trying to cover a deficit. Okay.
So the second set of numbers, the middle numbers are 4, that's federal money.
Yep.
And when it's a 3, it's state.
So then it's the fund balance, what kind of capital projects the board wants to accomplish and how much we want to allocate. If we want to allocate a comfortable number, and then figure out the projects as we go, because we don't have the engineer, we don't have estimates. But this would be, I envision fund balance as being a 1-to-1, because if you increase it, say 200,000 for capital expenses, you're gonna have that. On the flip side, we're not using fund balance to pay for our computers or, our internet or things that are reoccurring. But we still need to budget for it, even if we don't have an exact plan at this moment in time.
So, 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis, is that something that legitimately would fall under June 22, May 23?
The stuff that has
In the
come recently
legislative-
from the controller is saying 2025.
To start?
They're gonna start maybe being able to roll out permits in 23.
Oh, okay, I thought it was a little
So
closer.
that means, another 6 months to get permits going, and then another 6 months to get the businesses set up, so 2024, I would say, is like,
And then it depends on
Optimistic.
somebody opening up a shop in the village.
Which they
Well,
will.
they will,
They will.
they will.
Yeah, they will.
And we need to, that's another thing to put on sort of the legislative calendar, is being ready for that process, so that we have a review process in place.
Okay, so there's no revenue to it.
No, not next year.
Is it possible when we move into the expense conversation, which isn't today, to pull out ballpark expenses which are really one-time repair-related expenses that sit in the general fund, just to see what that number looks like?
I've tried to do that, and there's not that many. I pulled out 5,000 for Village Hall so far.
That's it?
A lot of the stuff is it's subscriptions and reoccurring salaries and benefits, and all that is the biggest chunk in the general fund. I'll go through it again and see. But there's not a lot of repairs budgeted for out of the general fund,
But we have a lot of repairs to budget for.
which would be fund balance.
So generally speaking, we don't budget repairs in the general fund. They're all considered fund balance.
For the past few years, that's what we've been doing, yeah.
Do we have the possibility to change how that works? Because I think that's one of the reasons we are where we are, potentially, with maintenance, so much
We
deferred.
can, but we already have a budget gap, so.
Yeah, so yeah, that's just gonna
Get those
significantly
parts
increase our
years
expenses.
ago, all week long.
Well, somehow we have to find a way to make these repairs.
Right.
I mean, you could just obviously spend down your fund balance, but eventually the fund balance disappears and
Right.
then you're gonna have to put it in your budget somewhere, how many years that is.
Like I have bathroom repairs in there, 5,000, you can move that to fund balance.
I mean, the roof is still leaking, the roof hasn't been addressed properly. We've got vines growing up under the siding and under we've got stuff we gotta deal with in the building.
Sounds like mine yesterday, the bar area was like, you needed an umbrella to sit at 3 tables.
I was looking up the other day at I'm not sure if it's wisteria or what the vine is growing up the outside, but it is up under the soffit and it's that wide, it's that thick. It's just pushing up the roof.
I think a lot of what's gonna happen is we have to spend to get things to a good place at a fund balance, and then we can build in a maintenance schedule into the operating budget. You know, so like bathrooms and firehouse and village hall, so we all had, you know, a couple thousand for each of those departments for regular maintenance. Because they're minor things, but you're never gonna be able to budget for roof repairs without having it a capital project. I mean, $5,000 if it's, you know, 1,000 or 2,000, but, you know, we'd have to make like a 5-year plan on how to get these into the budget once the bigger issues are addressed.
I think we have to do that, myself.
Yeah, there was some talk early on of putting together a ad hoc group of a few people to
Yeah.
help with this. Any thoughts on that further? I know one of them who is eager to go.
I mean, I would love to do that.
Okay.
We've been
What do
putting
you
out
need
fires.
help with this?
Volunteer?
Going through the list of everything that we need to do and help
Capital
identify
project plan.
numbers. So some of this stuff doesn't require an engineering firm. It requires someone who has some knowledge of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And rather than us and the staff who are already taxed, it's just a different voice of people, small group, who could help. So in other words, the firehouse,
A
for
working group,
instance.
yeah.
We've got a working number based on all old reports and new information that would probably be good to have someone with a little more knowledge on the subject just say, that number's crazy, this number's crazy, this number's realistic, use this number if this is what you wanna do. That kind of stuff, like an ad hoc committee of people
working
that
group.
are knowledgeable in this stuff.
I'm all for that.
If the board can do that. I don't get, so they would make our capital project plan, or you need them for estimates?
There's the way I see it, maybe I'm entirely wrong on this, there's 2 tiers of work that needs to be done in the village. There's the big capital work, the dams, the big building issues that need more technical interpretation. Then there's the smaller stuff, which doesn't need, I think, an engineer. It just needs somebody, like a lot of the work at the firehouse, I don't think needs an engineer.
Right,
Some of
well,
the
it's
work
same as-
in repairs
same as
around
the
the
roof,
village
you can
hall doesn't need
identify-
an engineer.
Wisteria.
So you're just talking about having someone come in and identify everything in this building.
Correct.
Here's all the work that needs to be done
Correct.
to bring it, to make it.
Well, we have a decent list based on what we've done so far with Charlotte, with the mold guy, with the guy who's looking at space inside. It's a matter of taking it all and making sort of a plan of attack and a funding plan.
Right, and have somebody scrutinize that list before it gets to a conversation, in my opinion. I don't think it's that complicated.
I don't think so either. It's just having, another set of brains and more hours in the day to be looking.
Correct.
Okay,
It could be even as simple as you hire somebody on retainer for the year for $5,000.
Right.
Who's got those types of knowledge skills, they're on retainer. You know what, there's a problem over at this space, do me a favor, go take a look at it. Send me an email of your technical expertise, something like that. So you're not constantly asking for the volunteer to do more than they've always done.
Where
because
does
they're always
something like
doing
that
more.
come from? What budget line is it a general fund thing, or is that, where does it?
Well, if you're gonna hire someone, that someone needs to have some kind of professional,
Yeah,
right?
like an
Yeah.
architect or,
And then a professional service.
yeah.
You're
we-
supposed
right.
to interview and, for professional services, but if it's, $3 to $5,000, there's some discretion there too. I guess it depends on what they're focusing on. If they're focusing on general water and sewer, then you would split it, 50, 25, 25.
I think about it as primarily being facilities, buildings.
Which is, I thought, this is why we wanted an engineer to do this. So
But some of this stuff
Some
I
of
don't
it
think
yeah,
needs an
need
engineer
So we need a DPW worker to go through.
who's qualified to do that and give us an independent,
Even if it were
intelligent,
just,
practical viewpoint. Now, you had Dave, who was the mayor, who actually could do a lot of that and did do a lot of that, just as part of what he thought was his job. So that, was helpful. We don't have that person, so we either elect somebody or
So
we
you're
hire
basically,
somebody.
you're just looking for a contractor.
a contractor or or a local architect to be like the maintenance mastermind.
For a couple of bucks. So it's not just constantly,
A
do me a
volunteer.
favor, can you go take a look and send me an email, which always turns out to be more than that. And, because I don't know if we're constantly doing this, but it's probably the same people that are helping out in that capacity.
If you're gonna do the work, you get an estimate anyway, so why don't we just ask people for estimates?
Well, that's time consuming and
Someone's gotta manage that.
it's gotta be
Some local
managed.
contractors have stopped providing estimates on a lot of projects unless it's something that they're really hearsay. But that's what I've heard, that people don't get back always because they're tired of being asked and not awarding.
Which is fair.
That's why it's competitive.
It's an idea.
So water and
It's an
sewer.
idea.
It's not gonna change the world. It's not gonna make the village all of a sudden click and go functional. It's leveraging resources for a tiny little money so that if I pay somebody to give me an opinion, I can actually say to that person, where's my opinion? Versus a volunteer, because you can't fire volunteers.
Right.
That's all it is. It's not, I don't wanna make it bigger. The big issues, the dams, the big stuff, the renovation of Mayor's Park, which is huge in dollars and cents, if you really look at it, that requires an engineering firm.
Right.
Or an individual who can dig in to stuff. The little stuff doesn't require that, and I wouldn't wanna pay somebody that kind of money to give me an assessment on something small.
But we just have to make sure that all of this, depending on the dollar amounts, all of it has to go through the procurement process.
Correct.
And, part of that is, I know that you wanna move on to water and sewer, but I think this is worth talking about for a minute. So, for example, I had someone come in to give me ballpark numbers on certain projects, so I knew whether we have to put it on an RF, whether we had to bid them or not. You have to start somewhere, and I see that the potential for a person like that, being the person who says, yeah, that's gonna be in the 3 to 5 range, or that's gonna be way beyond, you're gonna need to. So some of it is is starting in a place. It's got to be a place to start. I think we've spun our wheels a lot at the beginning, waiting for the village over time has spun wheels a lot, getting stuck on the very beginning.
It's a thought. I'll
It's a
put
thought.
it more into detail if you like, just as a theory. And I'll be happy to do that, and then we can have a conversation where it goes or where it doesn't go. But I don't necessarily think we need to spend a lot of time on it, because it's not a lot of money.
My only concern is finding the person that's willing to do that, who's also willing to not be part of
The work.
the work. Because you cannot have someone there's a conflict of interest that we couldn't allow
Right.
happen on that.
Right.
So,
I mean, obviously, it'd have to be done lawfully and ethically.
Yeah.
But we have to figure out some sort of system to move these things forward, because, you know, even when there were contractors on the board, projects just sat. And so we have to get to fixing things. Okay, water and sewer.
It makes sense, I'm not discounting that it doesn't make sense, it's just, I think, much bigger than hiring someone to give us quotes all the time.
yes, it's paying for it too.
But if it's $5,000, $500 a month, $6,000, and we can't figure out how to do that, then we have a bigger problem. And that's all I'm saying.
Yes.
We can figure out how to do that,
Yeah.
I
So,
would assume,
$2.7
but are you gonna,
something million, if we can't figure that out, then we have a bigger problem
Yeah, I agree.
as a village.
I agree.
And it has to be an honest conversation. I get the X's and O's, the numbers have to balance, but this is a philosophical conversation, and we have to educate the public on some of this stuff. You want, it's gotta give somewhere. I don't want C Street, because they make too much confusion. Then you're taking $30,000 out of the budget. That $30,000 is gonna have an impact.
Right.
We have a revenue problem, yes, but we have to educate the public on all these things,
I agree.
and it's a process.
Because we have expenses.
Yes.
They're not going away unless you just get rid of something.
Water and sewer.
water and sewer. So water and sewer are self-sustaining funds, we charge, usage and flat rates for each of them. So starting with water at the top, usage, you have usage in the village and usage out of the village, it's all the same rate. Just take an average of what people have been using over the years. Flat rates, the water flat rate in Cold Spring is $56.25 a quarter. Out of the village is $84.38 a quarter. It's 1.5 times the in-village rate. And these budget numbers are based off of actual flat rates charged from the last billing cycle, 2 billing cycles ago, because I ran the reports in December, so it's what would have been charged in January. So these numbers, they are what they are. There's really no wiggle room. I don't know when Butterfield's actually gonna be connected and ready to go, but even that, the house is one more house, it really not gonna make an impact on it. Retail, those flat rates aren't even been approved yet, so we can't count them for next year. Penalties, this is people, if they pay their bills late, it's 6% until it goes over to the county on their tax bills. Interest earnings, the bank, miscellaneous revenue here in the water fund, I actually put $500, might be a little more, a little less. There are final reads, we charge $50 a final read when there's a closing, those happen all the time. More now, but if the market slows down, so this is the only miscellaneous revenue I'd actually put a number to.
May I interrupt for a moment? Would anyone object to me turning up the heat a little bit?
Not at all.
Okay.
Got a little.
It's got chilly in here, yeah.
Grease the oil
Sorry,
bill.
Michelle, thank you.
Good grease the oil bill.
That's what I
50
was-
cents.
The budget just went out of whack.
Okay, just for a minute. It's freezing in
Did
here.
you
$5.69 a
That's,
gallon.
Oil
you
is-
took the words right out of my mouth.
We're not being bombed, everybody, so.
Yeah, no, listen, we are very fortunate.
Can you make it colder? I don't wanna pay the oil bill. Anyway, so revenues here as illustrated are 590,000. Water expenses are about 606, so there's a $16,000 budget gap. The revenue is what it is, there's really not wiggle room except for the fund balance. And those again are for capital projects. The expenses include hiring of a duly licensed operator at $37.50 an hour, a little higher than the original thought. And it includes built-in overtime. I had a conversation with Matt yesterday, not really sure fixing schedules and to have them cover the weekend, he could do it.
What does that mean?
How did that change? I had asked him to build out a staggered schedule so that someone's work week was defined as, I don't know, Wednesday to Monday, and someone else's Tuesday to da-da-da, so you wouldn't have overtime on a weekend as much.
He said he would look into it, but he was looking at his calendar and there's collections that are every Tuesday, there's 6-hour collections that are every other Wednesday, and then if one of those collections, the sample isn't perfect, then it has to be redone on a Friday. So he's trying to find a way to have his guys, with giving them 2 days off in a row, to be able to encompass 3 guys on sample days.
Right. So when I first had this conversation with him, he was enthusiastic about it, saying it's done all the time, but maybe what he was thinking about is places with more bodies to draw upon.
And that's what he was going with, that if he had more
Yeah.
bodies, it'd be easier, and he understands that he would have to build himself into the weekend schedule, and he's okay with that. He's worried about work during the week, and, right now, even on the weekends, so a duly licensed operator like himself or a potential new hire should be able to handle some things. If we just had a laborer, they call Matt sometimes just to run things by him before they're adjusting things, because Matt has the license. So originally when we were thinking about hiring this person, that we could adjust the schedules to cut some of the overtime. But if we can't do that, I built in status quo into the expenses, assuming that there's overtime, 4 hours on the weekend, rotating, and then, so there's still a budget gap now of 16,000. In the water fund, we can move some of those expenses to fund balance, and, there's no fund balance allocated right now for water, and usually there is. So we can move a couple, like an engineering project, he wants new fire hydrants, that's a couple grand, that can come out of fund balance. So I'm confident on the water side that I could probably close the gap this year, but water rates have not been increased since '04.
Jeez.
I think it's not realistic.
I did ask Matt if the new person would be 50-50, or if they would be more water and less sewer, so that we could allocate their salary differently. And he envisions everybody being 50-50, all 3 of them.
The challenge with not raising rates on things, while in the short term might seem like a good idea, over time it builds an unrealistic expectation for what the value of things, right? Public water, there's a cost for clean public water. And I don't see how it's responsible not to make an adjustment in those rates.
I agree.
I agree.
I mean, you have to pay people the market rate or the going rate, or you lose your staff. So that bundles into the price of our services.
Yeah.
Our public services, and obviously we're not looking to make money on the public, but the public has to support the service that they are requesting and receiving.
Well, also it's like a false sense of value in terms of what you can use. Right, if it's not reflective of, if your water bill isn't reflective of the cost of actually providing water, you're more likely to leave your sprinklers on all night, or whatever water wasting things we could be moving away from.
So I'll assume the theory of not raising the rates from prior boards in the last 18 years was because the
When you
fund
say it like
balance
that, it is absolutely ludicrous.
It's crazy.
No,
was
it's
because the
raised
fund
rate.
balance was so high.
It's not because the fund balance was so high. It is a little high in the water fund. The water fund was just self-sustaining. But the thought also is that there have not been large capital improvements in the water fund. So aside from water meters and the endpoints, couple water main relining, the majority of the debt on the capital projects sits in the sewer fund. So while rates haven't been raised because the water fund is self-sustaining for those past 18 years, it has not had the kinds of debt payments that the sewer fund has. So if you were doing capital projects in tandem, the same kind, like $1 million project out of the sewer plant, if you did $1 million project up at the water plant, now you're gonna have, $30,000 bond payment instantly. And once you put a new bond payment back in the water fund, it's not gonna be self-sustaining anymore. You're
Right.
gonna have to do something about the rates.
And there are capital projects that need to happen on the water side. So,
Isn't that the dam?
well, the dam isn't gonna come out of cash.
So like in 2018 was the last time we raised sewer rates, and we raised them to cover the bond payment for the sewer plant upgrade, that $1 million project.
Mm-hmm. And so.
Well, not that $1 million project, that one's still sitting in bands. We raised the rates for the bond for the pump station, the generator, and some sewer pipe relining.
So things like the filters at the water treatment plant, things like the repairs of the cap at Foundry Brook Reservoir, the repair of the spillway. Things like that would be examples of capital projects that you would bond for to get them done. And these have not
Ban or bond, yes.
ban or bond.
But they should be bundled into the price of the water, which we haven't done. So how do we assess what that number is to make our water fund meet the cost of things?
Well, we don't have numbers on what these projects, so it's hard to build in a debt payment without knowing exactly what is needed
So,
for these
right.
repairs.
And so have we had any responses to the RFP for engineer? So it's
Not a
time
lot.
to start follow-up phone calls. We've had 2 engineering firms call recently and be interested in services. I encourage them to reply. But getting that piece secured makes all of the rest fall in place when we start getting real numbers.
The two that called, were they on the RFP list or they were separate?
Separate.
Okay. So you're showing a deficit in the water of 15,806.62, correct? What would you have to do to rates to offset that deficit, keeping the fund balance for repairs and improvements? Could you do that? You don't have to do it right now. but-
Yeah, I have those worksheets.
So then
I
the
don't know if I have. them.
rate increase goes towards the operations of the water plant
Okay.
and people, because it hasn't been increased in 18 years.
And it'll be a small number if it's only that much. Everybody's bill goes up 10 cents, whatever it is,
However that works.
$5.
So you're actually keeping it separate, so your water rates are covering your operations.
Okay.
And your fund balance is covering your repairs and your improvements. That to me makes sense, but that's me.
I had done,
It don't always make sense.
some, preliminary, if we raised rates, like what would give us $6,000 or something like that. I thought I'd grab them, but I didn't.
Okay,
But I
maybe.
can send that.
Get back to us maybe on that one.
And what are we looking at raising rates on? Is it the consumption, the per gallon cost, or is it the flat rate fee?
Or is it both?
I mean, I would think you would, if you're trying to encourage,
Better behavior.
if you're trying to encourage
Consumption.
conservative use, you would wanna do consumption.
Conception's more equitable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what those numbers would look like. I mean, for someone like myself, whose water bill is probably on the top quarter, because I have a sprinkler, I'd
Well-
have to pay more, and that's fair.
I think that's fair,
I
yeah.
hate to bring this up,
But,
if we're using it based on consumption, we have about 10% of our meters that aren't working, that are not recording accurately. So
You need to fix
That needs to be
those.
fixed.
that needs to be fixed, and this has been going on since we've switched over meters.
Been
But-
getting progressively worse.
okay, God, you two are just rays of sunshine. Every time we have a conversation, it's just better.
How
So,
inaccurate?
well, how inaccurate, but also,
So the endpoint,
They're not, some are not
you have a
recording.
meter and you have a little endpoint. The endpoint is supposed to calculate the gallons that goes through the meter into the house. That endpoint, some kind of radio frequency, sends it to a website. Awfully not technical, but this is my version. Goes to the website. Somewhere between the endpoint reading and the website uploading to it, there's a disconnect. So the meter, if you go in there and physically read that endpoint, it'll tell you the right number. But the right number, it's not getting uploaded to the cloud or the software, which is supposed to happen once a day. It's not happening because there's a disconnect. And it could be that there was some plumbing work done in the house and the meter needs to be reset. They might have disconnected the wire, could be a replacement, whole host of reasons, bad cell signal where the endpoint is.
And the staff just hasn't been able to keep up with it?
My understanding is
There,
that.
when we run due billing each quarter, Matt gets the list of all the ones that, and before that it was Greg, that got the list.
And so my question is, as we look to the endpoint upgrade,
Hopefully that would fix the
will
problems.
will these be addressed as part of the endpoint upgrade?
Any
They would
questions
have
for
to
Matt?
be. Yes.
Because isn't that part of the point? I mean, some of this is transmission, some of the conversation we've had about transmission through foundations, right?
Could be the
Potentially.
problem. We don't know what the problems are. All I can do is run a report and tell you at any given point in time which endpoint is not connected to the cloud.
And where are we in the status of that project? We've received the endpoints, the truck came and delivered them. Matt was speaking to contractors, correct?
Matt got a contractor to give him a rough quote, but we need to do an RFP. Bart said he didn't want to do the RFP. He wants to do it, but he physically does not have the time to do
Okay,
it.
so this is another
So
thing we need an engineer for.
We're waiting for the engineer,
Mhm.
which that list is
So
based
can
off
we-
of a lot of Matt's recommendations.
So right now, let's say through this week, I imagined that the RFP, we were gonna have people responding to the RFP. So my job this week is to follow up with the people we sent the RFPs to and get actual bids. Because obviously that is the sticking point in almost every conversation that we have. And I thought that would move more quickly once the RFP was out. And maybe it's that Michelle, until we have an established village, or on retainer engineer, can you tell me again at what level we can bring in an engineer on a project basis? Like this particular project, I need this guy or woman to come in and make a plan.
It's hard to say, because professional services are at the discretion of not 100%, you don't have to follow the RFP process, because it's professional service and you have discretion. But some places, they put out an RFP to hire an engineer to write the RFP, if that makes sense. Places do that.
Right, but we have to get past, I don't know how to push past this. Like, can I not call 3 engineers and say, this is the project, right? I had one set come
If
out
you
to
could
try to
call
look at
3,
things.
yeah, just to
Yeah.
get it,
I had a
that's
set,
being competitive, yes.
I've had one come out and look at Northern Avenue, I haven't gotten the number yet. I can call 3 and say, this project, scope it. And does that
That would be okay.
constitute, because it's professional services?
That would be good enough.
That's,
Okay.
Because you're being competitive.
So,
But it can be a phone call, it doesn't have to be a whole advertised.
so how much money are we actually losing for this issue that I don't understand, that goes
So,
back to Greg's vote?
Their estimated reads.
Roughly,
yeah,
we talking
it could
about?
be, you know what, it could be 0,
Okay,
but.
We don't know.
We don't know.
And
Will we
if that-
recover what we've lost, or will we just start from
No,
where it's
we-
fixed?
Eventually we'll recover it, and this would happen when we did all the new meters. Some people got hit with huge
Surprise
bills
bills.
because things had not been recorded accurately.
so can we make a commitment that we fix this issue once and for all? Whatever it takes, there's money sitting there, whatever it takes.
It's not a conversation to have with Michelle and I, that's a conversation to have with the people who need to go out there. This is an issue Matt's gotta address.
And with this dual certified guy, does this then make these types of things happen versus not happening in the past because it's just totally overtaxed? That's a fair question, I think.
Time is, in the past I've gotten, they need time to do it. You have to go into somebody's house and figure it out. So you gotta troubleshoot, and things that take the most time outside of a regular operating day
But
sometimes
is
don't
this
happen.
something that could be, it's a conversation
For Matt.
with Matt, something that could be outsourced to have it done?
I don't think so.
So the company that makes these things doesn't have someone who can, in areas to.
Honestly, some of this is literally going to someone's basement, having the laptop, pressing a couple buttons, spending a half hour, and being done with it.
Right.
Some of them are that simple, not all of them, but some of them are really that simple. They just need to be reset. So having a contractor's not gonna help us because they need all the credentials, and it makes sense when you're doing all 900 of them, but not when you're doing 50 or 60 of them.
So some of this is planning with Matt, the work schedule of, all right, you've got your dual guy.
But do you actually do this if they're all gonna be, in theory, fixed when the endpoints are installed within the next 12 months?
12 months is a lot of accumulating water bill to slap somebody with at the end if they've been,
So they've been
Underbilled.
estimated, right, so at
Right.
least it's not that they're getting 0 bills, they're just getting some
Right.
kind of
And
estimation.
the estimates are not just based on let's pull a number out of the air and charge this much to people. We go
Right.
back and look at the history over the
Right.
course of years for specific quarters.
And if
So
a house is
it's
sold,
An educated guess, but
Right, like an estimated bill when you get
Yeah.
Con Ed or something.
however, it,
It eventually gets adjusted.
some of the
Is there-
estimates are based on the old meters, so
is there a base, like, does the average household, if they fall below a certain usage, they still pay, like,
everybody pays a flat
Flat
fee,
fee.
and everybody pays usage. It's not like Con Ed where your certain little tiny 10 kilowatts are included in your flat fee. It's not like
And
that.
what is the flat fee?
On water
Mm-hmm.
in the village,
it's 56.25 per unit.
I only
So-
ask from a personal perspective because it seems my water bill is always exactly the same. That's weird.
Butterfield.
Butterfield is one we're having issues, yes, Butterfield's one we're having issues with, so
The
we get
meter at
estimates.
Butterfield is one you're having issues with? I don't know what you mean.
There are some of the new
Some of the
Butterfield
condos.
condos, there's a handful of Butterfield condos where the endpoint is not connecting to the cloud.
So you might be one of them.
So
Sure.
you don't have any usage established, so
It's an estimate.
It's a brand new building.
Brand new endpoint, brand new meter.
there,
Butterfield is, the issue with Butterfield is separate than what we experience throughout the rest of the village. It's because Butterfield, we did not purchase the meters, they did it on their own. They have to, and it's a very simple thing, they need to be assigned to the village.
Who are they assigned to now?
The condo unit, the building, right?
To whoever bought them, whether it's Galero, the Unicorn,
Who's having this conversation? No one.
what conversation with who? It's not
That
up,
the meters need to be assigned to the village?
it's a conversation that needs to happen with Badger, Beacon Badger, not with Butterfield. It's just a question of them taking on their system saying, Cold Spring,
But who here, Matt,
Matt,
has the conversation with needs to have the conversation with Badger?
he's the one that should. We could have Ann do it, but
so Greg did all
But-
this when the whole village was done in the beginning. Greg used to send spreadsheets to Badger, make sure these are assigned to us, these are installed, make sure they're assigned to us. Taking the serial number on the endpoint and assigning it Village of Cold Spring as owner, so that when the Beacon Badger system, when you log in as Village of Cold Spring, any serial number tagged to Village of Cold Spring pops up
Yeah.
on our reports.
So the village, the water bill that I get comes from the management company. That's because the meter stuff is going to them. I should be
Yours
getting,
should come from
come from the
us.
village.
well, I rent, I don't.
Okay, so that's different, okay. So yours is different, so that's a different situation. It goes to the owner, whoever the owner is.
So I have 3 questions just to summarize.
Okay,
The endpoint issue.
Mhm.
I heard 12 months when it gets completed. Is there a way of expediting that so it's not 12 months? With
We need the
with
R.
money.
Money, this project has been committed from fund balance. We didn't get the grant. We decided we're gonna pay fund balance this project.
Okay.
So it's getting the RFP written and having contractors bid on it. And as soon as that's done, then it's up to the contractor on how long. When Matt informally called the contractor, I believe that they thought from start, like boots on the ground to end, would be 3 to 4 months.
Okay,
The majority of it being done in the first 2 months, and then you have the stragglers.
got it. Would we be able to close that second question, the gap 15,806 on just the consumption side, and what that would look like,
You mean by correcting,
increasing the consumption rate
increasing the rate?
to offset the 15,806.62 deficit.
Right now, the rate is, I think it's $3.05
Cents.
per gallon,
Per thousand.
per
gallons.
1,000 gallons.
So what that would look like as a percentage increase.
So if you upped it 10 cents to $3.15, that gives us $6,400, assuming a consumption as it was in the prior year.
So you have to raise it like 25 cents?
So 30 cents would give us, 19,000.
Yeah, but if you did just 10%, right, if you
30 cents per 1,000 gallon.
So 10% gets you the deficit, and it's 10% realistically, the way I would look at it is amortized over 18 years. Right? Is that how I would look at it?
Right.
Am I making an accurate assessment?
I'm not following, sorry. Can you rephrase the?
So if we're raising the consumption side, not the flat rate, so we don't penalize someone who's doing what they should do, which is conservation, they're penalizing people like me who's using water. We raise it by the 10% to close the deficit on the operating
Yes.
side.
Mhm.
That would do that, and the way that we would put the narrative is the 10% increase really is an 18-year amortization, because it hasn't gone up in 18 years.
Right,
Is that
exactly.
how I would explain it?
That's how I
To
would
the average
explain it.
person?
Yes.
And, okay,
Because that's what I was trying to say earlier, when you haven't raised it, it is an unrealistic expectation. And there's no other way to think about it except we've stayed paying at 2004 levels, and
18
we've
years.
got 2021 costs.
So on the
There's people
flip
who-
side.
So we're talking an $18,000
family.
increase.
In that time.
Me,
yeah,
If we did 10%, I'm just looking at, if we took 10% of the 180,000,
so maybe it's 9%,
it's 18,000.
so it looks better than 10. But I'm just using
Yeah.
theoretically how to
Yeah.
explain it.
right.
It makes sense, so you're not using fund balance to cover your operating expenses, which somebody philosophically could have a problem with.
Understood.
Okay, and then the third question is this dual certified, does that get us to have some of these issues resolved quicker because we have this extra quality person? That's, obviously it's a math question.
That's a math question, but that's the assumption that you have a better quality skill set working in the village.
Well, and one person isn't tied to to an everyday single task, right, as much. The testing can be shared among the two so that the other can be in the field doing some of the other stuff. I have no better language to talk about what Matt does, but
I mean, we just have to explain it in English to the average person, so you're adding a legitimate hire at a legitimate expense, what is it you get for that legitimate hire and the legitimate expense in English? And if it gets us to get some things done that we haven't because he hasn't had the time to do, which is totally fair, then that's a reasonable argument.
Yeah, I just, I throw out the number of 10% not working, and to be fair to Matt, it's a number that fluctuates. So it could be, we've had some months where it's as low as this 25, 30 meters that are not reading correctly, and there's other months you look at it and it could be as high as 80, 90 meters, and that's because things look like they're not working. You have people that are away, they didn't use water for a quarter, but it needs to be investigated as to why was there no usage quarter to quarter. Butterfield, I mean, this is a handful, we know this problem exists. I know there are houses that have plumbing work, and meters are supposed to kick back into start recording once 10 gallon goes through them. If they've been disconnected, they've been moved. And some places that's not happening. So it's not just one blanket answer to everything. There's various things that are involved.
So it
And
sounds-
some aren't really problems, some are just, you need to kind of investigate why something's not working.
So it sounds like meter maintenance is
Mhm.
a task that needs to be assigned in someone's job. This does not sound like a hugely skilled task. Maybe this falls, we've got operators doing the high-end stuff, and the person who's doing the labor, that's X percent of their job time is maintaining meters.
It could be.
I mean, I guess it just
Yeah.
hasn't been talked about in terms of,
And some of it is more the investigation, whereas, so I pulled a report, and then I pulled the same report 3 days later. And it's some of them, I think, but I didn't take a deep dive, just looking at it, it's that the signal strength isn't strong enough. So for whatever reason, the endpoint is reading 2 times a week instead of every day. Like, if you go into the system, it tells you that the endpoint is supposed to send it to the cloud at 6:52 and 6 seconds every day. Every endpoint has its own time. So that's a big investigation on, is that moving it? Where's a good signal strength? And that might be outside of a laborer, that might need some technical assistance, but it's all, each
Yep.
case needs to be figured out. So then, on the water side, we're thinking a 10% usage increase. Sewer,
And that closes the 15.8?
Mm.
Assuming there's nothing on the expense side that we can reduce further. We haven't got to that one yet, right?
and like the fire hydrants, if you wanted to, fire hydrants always will need to be replaced, so you can argue that that's operating, or you can argue that that's a capital that can be paid out of fund balance. It could go either way. Right now I have fire hydrant replacement as an operating expense.
What's the
lower
amortization of
side.
a fire hydrant?
yeah.
30 years?
It
Like
could
how old is
be.
a fire hydrant last?
But goes back to this, we don't wanna always use fund balance to pay for every capital project. So if you're replacing 2 to 3 hydrants every year, that should be built into the operating budget, because now you have a schedule.
Does Matt have a replacement plan for hydrants, or when was the
I don't
last?
think so.
Okay,
But he has replaced some hydrants, so we budget to allow him to keep doing that.
okay, so that sounds like another one of those things that, like vehicles, needs to be on schedule.
I would assume if a fire hydrant has a life expectancy of 15 years, it's like an HVAC unit or a roof, it's capital.
It's a capital,
So use
yeah.
fund balance for that.
So right now we have it, so we could.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
So then I could take a couple thousand out, and then we would only have to raise water 7% instead of 10.
We just accomplished something.
We just did accomplish something. But things like that make sense to do, to make a decision and do, to think about them in a different way.
Anything else that you would think might be capital that's in operating? And I would assume the auditors, when they go through this, they have a schedule of what they're capitalizing, according to GASB, whatever the number is lately.
Yeah, based off of the fixed asset schedule that I give
Right.
them, which is anything over $500 that the village purchases.
500.
Yes, which the auditors have suggested that we increase that. That's village policy.
Right.
We could up that to 2,000, 3,000, and then we don't have to. It's the difference between keeping track of the asset and amortizing the asset. We use them one and the same right now.
Yep.
I was just looking at it yesterday.
So
So it definitely makes sense to raise that number as long as
Yeah,
it's
for
okay
sure.
with the auditors.
yeah,
Yeah.
they made it as a,
Yeah,
not a requirement, but a suggested
Right.
recommendation.
that makes sense.
For the
This
water.
one's just highway.
This is a big number.
So quickly on the water before we move on to sewer, for the fund balance, I'm gonna see if I can pull anything else out other than the fire hydrants. And then I'm going to have to estimate a number for the endpoint project. I was hoping to have, a better estimate from an engineer, but we're not going to, so we're just gonna have to estimate, and then whatever we don't use, we'll go back into fund balance. I think we used the number like of 170 or 150 last year to complete the whole project with an outside vendor. And then dam engineering would also come out of fund balance.
Or dam engineering is also a potential ARPA project, right? Cause that engineering is now 10 years old.
Right.
And that's gonna be pricey.
So, over the past few years, we've allocated dam engineering to become that a fund balance, and it just hasn't been done. So I'd be comfortable with reallocating again, and then if the ARPA money from the county comes, well, I don't know if you can use dam engineering on the ARPA from the county. It depends on what kind of rules that the ARPA money has.
Right, so
We
that's.
could use it,
Mhm.
because we have different rules, because we receive less than $10 million. The county as a whole received over $10 million, so there's more strict
Well,
rules.
you can think about it in different ways. We take our 200K and put it toward dam re-engineering,
Mhm.
and then when the county money comes, we use it for the
Yep.
things that we can use it for then, with water.
Mhm.
I mean, some of it, there has to be some interchange so that we can
Right, yes.
get to things and get it done. And my starting point with that would be to go back to Tectonic and say, we need this update. I mean, they've got the base data,
Or Chazen.
or Chazen.
Chazen was more recent.
Well, but Chazen was looking at a specific question. Chazen was looking at, should you drain down your reservoirs and shift to groundwater? And my fear about that is what's happening in the Garrison Landing district, where the reservoir goes dry, because the reservoir they were proposing drawing down from serves Fishkill, East Fishkill, Beacon, and then chunk the village into it. I mean, it scares me a little bit. When we've got surface source water now. On the other hand, maybe it should be tapped just so that there's rights, so that we have rights to it.
I would like, if it's okay, to still include an additional 50,000 out of fund balance, whether it's for dam engineering or if it's to get moving on some of these capital projects. And 50's low, but at least it gives us a starting point, and then we could allocate ARPA and, you know, these filters that need to be done can cost up to 85,000 a filter.
Right.
What about if we took 100?
Works for me. I think that
Just
makes more
throwing it out
sense.
there and get it done.
Yes,
If
I
ARPA
agree.
does come in, you could always backfill your fund balance.
Yep.
Then the question
Or
would
do two
be,
filters in the same year, a filter
Right.
on ARPA and a filter from us.
so the question would be, if you take 100, do we have the capacity to get it done? If not, then what's the point?
Well, we might not have the capacity in-house, but
No, I mean the capacity to get it done, meaning whatever that is involved. I
Yes.
have no idea what.
The filters have got to be
they
done.
have to be done.
He has quotes on what it's gonna be, they're just informal because they're so high, it has to be an engineered RFP.
Okay,
And it's gonna be a third party doing it, the
So
most
it's
of the
doable.
work.
How many
all
are
right,
there?
so,
3.
It's 30.
2 definitely need to be done sooner than later.
and how many are there?
3.
Total?
3.
Right, so we can do all 3.
For 250?
Well, he was looking at new ones and reconditioned ones, and the new ones were 300,000,
A
as I recall.
reconditioned one was 85
Reconditioned is 85.
per.
Recondition.
Yep. And he has no problem with doing the reconditioning, he
Let's
thinks
just
that
get them
that's,
done. In my mind.
I agree.
goes back
Agree.
to getting the engineer to write the RFP,
Yep.
put it out to bid, and
Yep.
then somebody else is doing the work then. So now on the sewer side, it's the same thing, flat rates, usage, penalties. Interest and earnings is a little different here because on the 2 bonds that we have, EFC pays half of our interest. So you'll see the whole interest expense, and then 50% becomes revenue for us to pay the interest. That's why you have 7,300 on interest and earnings instead of just your typical 500 for bank money market rates. And then here, the sewer fund, you have a $33,000 gap. And the sewer fund, I am not confident that I can pull money out towards capital projects in the sewer fund.
But we've done,
You
We've
can, is that
done-
what you said?
I can't.
You can't, okay.
we've done the big, what remains of the big capital projects is enclosing the building.
But none of that's budgeted for operating. The reason that the sewer is so off, well, one, we just increased the personnel, but because they have 3 different kinds of debt sitting in the sewer fund right now. You have 2 bonds and you have a ban, whereas the water fund only has a ban.
And you can't, I'm sorry to ask these base questions, you can't move water into sewer?
No.
Nope.
And that's just law.
Yes, sewer revenue needs to pay for sewer projects. Water revenue needs to pay for water projects. The funds need to be self-sustaining. You can do, small transfers into the general fund because it's a shared service. But water and sewer, we've set it up so that there is no overlap. Matt accounts for all the time, we account for all the supply ordering. The only thing that you can do is if the new person was going to be 100% or 75% water, I can take some of that expense out of sewer and flip-flop it. So right now I have Matt, the potential new hire, and Scott, 50 in each fund. If you were to say that the laborer worked predominantly at the sewer fund and the new hire worked predominantly at the water fund, I can split their salary 75-25 so that the water fund takes the bigger hit. But when I talk to Matt, it's not realistic right now because you're gonna onboard a new person, they're gonna have to learn both plants, they're gonna have to spend half their time. In the past, that's how it was. Lou worked at sewer, Scott worked at water, a little bit of overlap, but those were their plants. That's how it worked. And then Matt was split between the two of them.
But once they're onboarded, can you then make that switch?
If-
Because that's the only way we can afford it?
If that's how it's gonna work in the best operations of the plants, which is again a Matt question, which is why I asked him yesterday.
What are the potential options for
Your flat
closing the
rate you
gap?
have here on sewer are wrong.
Where?
What?
What'd you say? Oh, I copied it from water.
Okay,
The numbers are right, the
Alright.
description is wrong. Thank you. Sorry about that.
On what, the unit?
I thought I found an easy fix to the gap.
No, the numbers come
Try
from a
though.
different spreadsheet.
Yeah, keep going. What else?
Michelle, what are our potential options for closing some of that gap?
Sewer always has me at a loss. Sewer is
Where
the
you
fund balance is small, it's very slim in the, it's the debt. You can't cut debt, and the other large expense is salaries.
When was the last time,
2018.
18.
For the
18.
flat rate, usage hasn't been changed in a little while.
How much would usage?
Usage was
change the bottom
instituted in
line?
2008 on the sewer side and never changed.
can we talk
That's-
about that then?
Yeah, that's-
So on the sewer side, every 10 cents gives you $5,200. So if you want,
I mean, sewers, the consumption is what, it's $1.25,
$1.12,
$1.12.
Well, since 2008, things have changed in the way we handle sewer. The cost to dispose of the byproduct has risen. The cost of chemicals has risen. It seems like there are lots of reasons to talk about why usage needs to be adjusted. Again, it's the same as water. The costs have kept going up, and the expenses
the
have kept going up in the
disposal
use.
the cost of disposing has gone up so
Yes.
much. There's a $130 surcharge now on every single truck that leaves the village.
Oh my God.
That alone is like a $6,000 increase to the budget.
Well, this seems
Okay.
like a
Per year.
no-brainer.
So as part of the narrative, if we could get the number of what the disposal costs have increased over 3 years, that would
So
be.
we have to go back to, what did the aeration project accomplish? And then as a byproduct of that, so the electric went up with the aeration project. I don't know, I wasn't here when it did, so I didn't know what the narrative was then. But there are some byproducts of the aeration project that I don't know if they were factored, like electricity.
I'm happy to work to sit down with you and Matt and help build out to translate Matt into a narrative that other people can understand. Yeah, it would be great to have you as a middle point, because you bring the finance piece, but you also understand elements of Matt when I don't. So if the three of us could work on this narrative, it's a compelling story. It's crazy. It's like asking a family to live on the same income for multi-year periods. It doesn't work that way.
So, on the flat rate side, for context, the flat rate was instituted in '97. The flat rate from 97 to 2018, so 21 years, went from $40.30 to $88.30. So more than double, a little bit more than doubled in those 21 years. The usage has not changed since '08.
The problem here though is at $1.12 per thousand, you can't do the same 10% increase on sewer that you do on water, because it really doesn't get you anything.
Well, no, it does.
It gets you $5,000 for every 10 cents.
But we're looking at a $33,000 gap, I mean,
Right.
you look at a 10% increase.
It's only gonna give us half
Yeah,
of
but
it.
it gets you somewhere.
Yeah,
You
It's
need,
not
It's a
nothing.
start.
you need 70 cents.
which is significant, so now you're talking
That's a
about
lot, that's a lot.
a 65-70% increase on the rate, on the consumption rate.
So there's some equipment lines, like treatment and disposal equipment. Some of that's regular operating equipment, some of that might be one-time purchases. I don't know, we'd have to ask Matt. Like, there's a vehicle in the budget for each of them. But the fund balance in sewer is less than 300,000, so even to move some of this stuff to fund balance, we can, but you don't wanna move too much for an extended period of years, because the fund balance can't absorb it all.
You saying a new vehicle?
Yeah, Matt has one right now. Water and sewer has always had two. I don't wanna even go down the route that if there's 3 people working, do they need 3 vehicles? I don't know, but there's been in the budget a second vehicle replacement for water and sewer for 2 or 3 years now.
The point of having 3 people is so that there's rotation,
Cleaning
not
up.
that all 3 of them are working at the same time.
No, all 3 are working at the
They
same
are
time.
gonna
Well, you
work.
drive your car to the plant, get in the car that drives you to the dam, and you bring it back, and you go home in your own car. Isn't that how it should work?
Isn't that how it works right now?
I have no idea, I'm asking.
Can they ride together?
Not if
Right now,
they're
there's,
not working
for
together.
whatever reason, they're using one vehicle. And I think in between some of the plants, they're using their personal vehicles, which you're going to and from the plants, but then if 2 people need to be in 2 different houses, somebody would be driving their personal vehicle to somebody's house to check on their water problem.
Which is a different liability issue, which is, we should at least be refunding
I
gasoline.
still don't understand what
Mhm.
happened there, because the car from water and sewer that wasn't being used is now being used in highway.
That's what I'm confused about.
So that needs some clarity.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other clarity, which I'd like to get, is once we get past onboarding, can we really take a look at changing the allocation to water to sewer? 50/50 is easy. Can we
Yep.
relook at that? Because it might just be contingent on getting that second certified person of closing the gap.
Can you say that again? Once we're past onboarding.
I get the onboarding.
Yep.
Once we're past onboarding,
Uh-huh.
can we relook at the allocation of water versus sewer for this new person and the other people,
Mhm.
the other one person besides Matt, and take a fresh look at it and definitively say, we can't do it, or we can do it, maybe it's 60/40. Because it just might be contingent on getting that second certified person on the sewer side. Because one of the proposals was dual certified only on water.
No, it's dual certified water licenses and sewer licenses.
Right, but one of the options was just on the water side,
Mhm.
correct?
It's an option, but I don't know if, it seems like you have a smaller pool of applicants that have a single
Single.
license.
At the end of the day, you have to cut a deficit,
Yes.
Right.
and there are multiple ways of cutting the deficit. And sometimes we have to accept something we may not want to accept to make it work. So all I'm saying is let's just throw out all these options.
Right, and I don't mean to be like combative, I'm just trying to bring
No, I know,
all,
I'm just saying, you know,
all theories and opinions into it.
I don't see how you can't not do that. Once the person is onboarded, consider allocation.
I have no idea, it's worth a conversation. If it's somewhat contingent on getting the person who is dual certified, we have one certified person now and everything seems to function. We're improving it substantially. We're not we wouldn't necessarily be improving it to the max,
Right.
but is that something, it's an option. I'm not saying it's the ideal option,
Yeah.
you have to close the gap somehow. And you can't close it just by raising the rates, is what it sounds like. So we have to get a little more creative.
Which is what I was thinking along the lines, is having at least a 75-25 split. So maybe if the onboarding process is
Few
4 months or whatever, and then the other 2/3 of the year, split it. The other thought Matt brought up, while we're talking about stipends, they've come up in other conversations. Matt receives a stipend. I have it split 50-50 because Matt's time is split 50-50. In the past, the stipend was all paid out of water fund. So if we clarify what that stipend is for, if it's for water superintendent only, then it can move back to water. I thought that it was for water and sewer superintendent, split it 50-50, just another conversation.
Yeah, fresh look.
That makes sense.
Is raising the sewer rate still on the table, just not to some crazy degree?
I think for illustrative purposes, would it make sense, whatever percentage we increase water, we increase sewer too? And then see where it brings us?
Yeah.
10% on each?
Yeah.
Water, we can bring it down if we move, like the hydrants into fund balance.
But then you'd have to bring sewer down and,
If we don't, if we do them different instead of even,
I mean, you haven't increased the consumption side of sewer since 2008.
Right.
So it's almost a similar argument to the consumption side on the water
Yep.
side.
Yep.
You're over 15 years.
Yeah.
You could easily do a narrative of what your costs have gone up, specifically disposal, to justify functioning. So when I flush my toilet, I know it's gonna go
And
someplace
chemical,
legally.
and chemical, what we're
Yeah.
spending to protect the Hudson River.
flush it every other visit.
What'd you say? No. Flush it every other visit.
Every-
I think we can pass a local law.
Put a brick in it.
But that's an important, to me, that's an important part of narrative, is that we are river keepers. And we have to make sure we're doing it right and doing as we should, so that when we're discharging cleaner water than we would have.
Okay.
So I feel good about water, sewer we'll work on, and general fund, we'll need to work on a little bit. Did C Street say when they would get back to you?
Nope.
Okay.
They said they were working on it, thinking about it. And I did write to them yesterday.
And short-term rentals, we've decided we're not gonna count on that money at this point in time.
In the budget.
Well, yeah, as your advice, I think we'll get it, but
That would be surprised.
conservatively, we'll wait. And it still depends on people's compliance or whether we start handing out tickets.
So here we are in May.
There? No, camera's right, never mind.
Well, June 1st. So that's 3 months. Then we have all the way until next May. So we have 15 months in order to collect revenue on an STR. Is it possible that applications at a bare minimum can be collected within the next 15 months?
Oh, please, God, if we can't, as Joe said, we've
We
got
need
bigger
to find new
problems. You know,
It's actually that simple.
can if I'm raising a point that should not be raised in this session, you can correct me, but with all of us in the room, I would like to put out an RFP for the village attorney. That bottleneck needs to be cleared.
What do you mean?
Is that a
I'm not saying
motion?
anything.
I said fine.
Okay,
I make a motion
Have
that
you
we
had
put
that
out an
conversation
RFP
with
for a new
them?
village attorney.
but I need to.
I would have the conversation with them first. Before
Oh,
we
yeah,
do
it's
that.
absolutely.
Say, listen, there's a bottleneck here, there's something going on that's causing, I mean, maybe we're the little fish in the practice, and you're not gonna get that attention, because you're
I can tell you,
tiny.
this is not how the relationship has functioned under previous village attorneys.
I don't know.
With in
We
terms of
can't
service.
get anything done if we don't have
Yeah.
the legal advice we need.
Yeah,
So,
that's the
and if we're
blockade.
not getting the attention that we need to find it elsewhere. That's what it comes down to.
So I would assume that if we did that, it's not gonna change in expenses, I would hope. For the revenue side, the fund balance in the general fund. What's a comfortable number to start using to allocate towards projects getting done?
What's our total again?
1.6 or 1.8?
No, I think it's less than that, isn't it?
I should have brought that.
Isn't it one? I thought it was 1.2 something as of June 1st. Does that sound right?
Oh yeah, after the 338.
Right, we took
Yes.
out 338
Yes.
last year,
Mhm.
which got us to 1.2 something.
Yes.
I can't put my finger on the exact number.
I mean, it strikes me that what we're coming down to is, look, we don't have a $1 jillion, but we don't have a lack of money. It's really project management. Keeping projects moving, getting them scoped, estimated, and keeping them on track. That's the lacking piece here.
Still looking for that number.
I think it's 1
So-
2 something.
It'll kill me if we don't find it.
So if the budget's, say, 2.5 million. I'm trying to think what,
1268237. That's the number, as of June 1st, 2021.
Well done. Michelle, what are the there are rules about how
there's not rules, there's suggestions.
suggestions for how much
20 to 25%. If you have anything less than that, you get a ding on your fiscal rating score. So if the budget's 2.5, 25% is 625. So I don't want to dip below, say, call it 700.
So why don't we take out 3 with a commitment to getting stuff done either in the capacity of physical work or project management or engineering as part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a very limited highway department. There's only so much the 3 guys can do, whether it's a 3.5 person or whatever.
Yeah. It's
Whatever,
gonna have
once
to
we
be.
can identify what they're capable of doing, then the rest of it we outsource. And I think that's where that comes out of that stuff, is just start really chipping away at stuff.
So we could take 625. What about 4? I mean, chips will do paving, the big stuff of paving, the things that I'm, well, if we plan CHIPS projects right, we can cover a lot of,
You can cover the engineering if you need it.
because I think about things like the dip in the middle of Mountain Avenue and the on B Street, the pipe-shaped dip that goes all the way across the street. There are things it's not just a paving issue, it's what's happening underneath the paving. So some of it,
If you're fixing a culvert or a storm drain and you're resurfacing over it, they can all be included,
okay,
and your ADA ramps on the sidewalk.
and so that's where we need the brain, your brain and an engineering brain to work together to get us to. I mean,
So the engineer's gonna know all the ins and outs and chips, that's the purpose.
Yeah.
So they should be, well, that's one of, I think, one of the village requirements should be that the
Yes.
engineer needs to be well versed in chips.
Yes.
Maybe not I'll do all the reimbursements and all that process here, but knowing what's project eligible, that needs to
Yeah.
fall on the engineer.
Right, that's an art.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in school, state aid.
Sure.
A closet is eligible for state aid if it's written a certain way.
I mean, without, I don't know how quickly we can get numbers. Without numbers, it's hard to know what number to pull. If we were to take down 4 and we didn't use it, it would roll into the next, it would roll back into the general fund in the following year, right?
I would. 4 just would sound so high. Like 338 was a high number.
And we never use it all.
Right.
All right, so,
Yeah, it goes back to the
350.
capacity issue of what we actually can get
Right.
done.
but that was also a capacity issue without an engineer and with highway doing garbage. So,
But out of that 150, that was the wall itself, so.
Okay.
If we don't have other big $150,000 project to knock out half of it, or unless we do, you know, we won't know.
All right, so maybe Joe's number is more reasonable then.
It left the balance at $1 million, it's a start,
Yeah.
but I'm open for suggestions.
So, into the budget right now, let's see what we're adding. 9, 5, 3, and 1. So we're adding 18,000.
On revenues, right?
We had a gap of 24,6, so now we got a gap of 6,600 roughly. I think we could take out, you know, so I have 12,000 in for engineering for non-chips out of operating.
Mm-hmm.
If we pay for half of the engineering out of the fund balance, because they're going to be for capital projects, that closes the gap. Assuming though still that we raise taxes the most, and I don't know if that's a valid assumption.
$99?
I'll stick my neck out. I'm not comfortable raising the taxes the maximum amount, it's my personal opinion.
Can you give the logic?
I just don't know, I'm not comfortable raising somebody's property taxes by close to 5% with everything else that's going on when we're sitting on $1.3 million in a fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, to me, it's just, you know, can we do it? Yes, you need 3 people to say yes and 2 people to say no. It's not like a school where you have a public vote.
Right, right.
But still, I think as a fiduciary in year 1 of your administration and what everybody ran on, I think that's a lot, my personal opinion.
Well, and also if we're raising water and sewer.
It's the max.
It's
We
the
can
max.
certainly go down from there.
If we
Correct.
don't do that, then Michelle, does our numbers then get even worse? It's like,
So half of the, so it's
So-
111,000, so half of it would be 55,000,
that we're short. So,
and that
you know,
goes.
where are we gonna come up with that revenue? Like, short-term rental?
We
Yeah.
got close
Well,
to 20
well,
in new
they'll pay
revenue.
for themselves though, because
We
they,
have close to 20 in new revenue, so
But we had I
55.
had a 24 gap already.
Right, but if you're at 55 in the gap,
Yep.
it's what you said, if we went half, right?
So right now, I just closed the gap, assuming we raise taxes. We're gonna start with a new gap of 55,000.
Okay, that's including adding in the 18.
So what if we then,
Bless you.
and I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding how you can use general fund, but if we were to take 350 out of general fund, that gives you a 5,000
Out of the
gap.
fund balance in the
Mhm.
general fund.
Out of the fund
They need
balance.
It needs to be for, one-time expenses. It cannot be to sustain.
Right, so if Joe's argument is, I can't justify raising taxes when we're sitting on money,
Right.
why not use the money that
You
has
could only-
accumulated for one-time expenses and
If we
move
find
around?
one-time expenses.
Yeah, the majority of our expenses are recurring.
Yes, but right now we're
personnel.
talking about capital projects.
But capital projects aren't in the budget. The budget is operating, so I have 12,000 in engineering, I'm paying for 6,000 of that already out of fund balance to pay for the other 6. You know, so we have 6,000. I can say that engineering is a one-time, although we constantly have engineers, it should be in the budget if we're gonna constantly have it, but they are for one-time projects, I'm okay with that. Not okay with using fund balance, to pay for the website, or to pay for salaries. And if you do that, and the comptroller, they'll come and they'll issue an opinion saying that you used
Right,
it.
so we don't wanna do that, obviously, but whatever way we can creatively shift a balance that we're sitting on
And I'm happy to do
recurring
that.
expenses,
I'm not confident that it's going.
that you're gonna find enough.
And, you know, we could do that tomorrow. I'm gonna send these out today, or the expenses. I have some notes. If we can find one-time things or eliminate expenses, I'm okay with that. Salaries is another conversation. That the salaries did come out higher than, you know,
Right,
maybe we might have thought they were going to be. And that might be worth a revisit too.
So when do we have that next, when do we sit down, today we've looked at income,
Mhm.
when are we gonna look through expenses?
Tomorrow
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
And the following meeting, right? When's the following one?
Well, the following meeting is scheduled for the 23rd.
Mhm.
So tomorrow night is the regularly scheduled workshop meeting,
Yep,
of which the budget is on there. Sunday, we have to post a tentative budget.
This coming Sunday,
yeah.
Correct,
by law,
yes.
Can we
But a
reschedule?
tentative can change, so
it just has to be balanced.
it
Right,
just
it has
has to
to
be
be
balanced, so I will work on it, and in the meantime, you know, we can leave it at the max taxes, I mean, people will see it, or we can take it down and close the gap with fund balance, knowing that it's going to change, and that that's
I mean,
not gonna be the,
isn't that the purpose? You're putting up a tentative budget as a worksheet.
yes,
So,
and it's okay to make changes, that's what it's there.
yeah, that's
Okay.
the purpose.
Sounds like we're gonna have to,
Yeah.
one way or the other. But at least then we know where we're standing, and if we do have to raise taxes, I mean, sounds like we'd rather not, but if we do have to, at least then we can say, there's a reason, like we're increasing the services to cover the needs of the village, and the costs of that have consistently gone up, and we need to pay for it, and this is the only place we have money for it,
Well,
revenue. I mean, or we get C Street in here every week.
Well, I mean, that's the balance, right?
Right,
That's
you know,
the
I mean,
balance.
STR's done.
So last year when you did the budget, 21, 22, I'm reading the thing that was adopted,
mhm,
you used a $338,000 fund balance to balance the budget, for all intents and purposes. You got to a tax rate of 0 and a levy of 2 point something,
mhm.
correct? But the spending increased by like 5%, I think, just off the top of my head. I'll have to check it.
Okay,
Budget to budget spending.
okay.
So the 338 was used to stabilize the tax rate last year, correct?
No, it was
No?
used for one-time projects. The only thing that I would be comfortable saying to stabilize the tax rate would be the purchase of the dump truck. So the dump truck, because it's so expensive, vehicles are usually in the budget year over year. The first payment is coming out of that 338, but now I've built that 30,000 back into the budget. Or 40,000, whatever it is.
Built a payment out of what budget?
So last year, the dump truck, we said that 35,000 of that would come out of the 338
Oh, oh,
of fund balance, but I put it into the operating budget now because it's gonna be a recurring expense. So it stabilized it in that way, but the rest of it, like the wall would have never been in operating. The firehouse boiler would have never been in operating.
So last year had $904,000 of non-tax revenue in the budget.
Okay.
This year's non-tax revenue is roughly on this projected list, what, the 328?
Plus
the
the,
16, plus the 9, so it's
plus the 310,
for a total of?
25.
plus the 41. Non-tax revenue is everything except taxes.
Alright, so take 2524 minus
That's
1,
36.
8, so it's like 6 something 7,
Six,
right?
640, 680, 690,
Like
7 plus fund balance.
And the biggest chunk of that
Right,
is,
so the fund balance was used for non-tax revenue, right?
Yes.
In the assumptions.
Yes.
So in effect, it is used to stabilize the tax rate, because it's on the revenue side.
I guess.
It's just how you wanna look at it,
Mhm.
but it was used for that capacity.
I'm afraid to say that because although it did stabilize the tax rate and allowed us not to increase the taxes as one factor of the reason why taxes didn't go up, it's not to sustain the budget. And I think that there'd be a confusion in the public with that. That if you say that you use the fund balance to stabilize your tax rate, well, why can't we keep doing it? Well, we do for capital projects, but it's not like we use that 338 for reoccurring expenses minus, the dump truck.
Okay.
Well, I think that we'll have to look at the expenses
Yeah.
then,
And
and
do
we'll
the same
start
kind of
chopping there. I mean, that's the next step, so.
Well, we accomplished some stuff today. We were able to identify numbers where there weren't any in terms of income.
On the expense side, so, which is helping to not close the gap. So I reached out to Kieran, he said he should have numbers by the end of this week, I emailed him last week,
For insurance
for
stuff.
insurance. Insurance on the workers' comp was a fixed 2-year rate, so I knew what the budget was gonna be last year. I don't know what workers' comp insurance is gonna do, so being,
Yeah, which
Say
seems
something.
but
pretty
being
good.
conservative, I put in an 8% increase. In the past, it's gone up anywhere from 2 to 5%. Not changing our rates in 2 years, I assume that we might get hit double. So I put in 8%, but if they come back and surprise us on workers' comp and saying it's only a 2% increase, that's awesome, and there'll be some savings there. And unallocated insurance has been going up, there have been claims, it is going up. I put in 15% as a placeholder. 1 year it was like 11% that it went up, so 15 is not totally unreasonable. But these are numbers that might help close the gap.
Is there something we can do with insurance, with coverages and deductibles? I don't know what our deductibles are, to knock that 15 down?
The deductibles are rather high to
Are they?
begin with.
Yeah,
Like, what's our deductible for, like, a building or something?
I don't know, but a
Believe
car
it's
is
a-
1,000.
I think it's 1,000 across the board.
So that's high for a building. I mean, not high. I mean, you could conceive, depending on what you
Yeah.
save.
We could talk to Kieran and get different quotes. There's a lot of things that factor into it each year. Last year we had a big jump because there's some claims, there's some pending claims. One of them is still pending out there.
And we have changed carriers in the past. If another carrier comes in, lower, we changed workers' comp a couple years ago from, I don't remember what it came from, but we definitely changed it. So Kieran does look at other companies in the state.
Workers' comp, I mean, we really haven't had many claims in workers' comp. Part of that's based on, so we might be okay on workers' comp. I'm concerned about, we've had a number of the police vehicle, we had the garbage truck.
The garbage truck was a different fiscal year though,
It's a claims history.
but it's
Yeah.
a claims history.
And we're
Yeah.
taking that off of our policy, right? The garbage truck, the other truck, when he does their statement of
Mhm.
values or whatever.
So
knock
they're-
off the
yeah.
stuff.
Like the garbage truck is 700 for the year.
Okay.
So in
Roughly.
total, how many vehicles less do we have, just the 2?
Well, the one garbage truck came off already, and now if we're,
The second garbage truck will, well, we have to do something with it, but
and I think that NYMER suggests that you don't take them off insurance until
right.
Get rid of it.
So the title is not yours.
the license,
Absolutely.
it's not drivable.
Makes
Now, we
sense.
did have a bunch of vehicles that we're probably paying next to nothing that we sold this last year at auction that are on our list. But if we save $1,000, I'd be surprised if it's that much with those and some of those things.
Because some of those didn't work, so I want to say that they were on a property list, not
Yeah.
necessarily a vehicle driving list. Because you physically couldn't drive some of them because they were missing parts, because they were used for parts.
Cannibalized.
That's fine, okay.
So insurance might be a reality and not change, but it might have a potential for some savings. That's the only big thing that I could see.
Utilities.
And then utilities, I've factored in. In the past, I've assumed 2.75 cents per gallon on gas, diesel, oil. We're in the 5s right now on diesel. Oil. Gas is up to, our rate is over $3 too. So I put in 4.5, $4.50 a gallon. That significantly changes those lines. Electricity, we're in the CCA, so we're not feeling those changes,
Right.
except on streetlights,
And that force majeure claim failed.
thankfully. So that keeps us into a fixed rate, through, I think, next June.
following June to 3-year.
So that's helpful to have a fixed rate, with all the fluctuations, like I said, aside from streetlights. So streetlights are typically 3,000, they went up to 4,000 in the last bill, and I would assume they're gonna go up a little bit more and then come back down. So that's a benefit that we haven't seen the electric raise in this upcoming budget, but I have gas and oil raised. And 4.5, it might be high, it might be accurate. So the last oil deliveries that we got in the village in the end of February, because they only bill once a month, were 3.2 a gallon, $3.20. And we are discounted from regular public, if we even use the power grid. I don't know if it's fiscally responsible to bring those numbers down. I don't know if they're too low.
I mean, I think in this realm, everything's unpredictable
Right.
and it's gonna be unpredictable for a long time. So I assume the worst would be my stance on that.
I'm using 4.5 a gallon based on average gallon usage over the past 3 to 5 years history. With a couple tweaks, I took out the garbage truck, like less diesel because we don't have the garbage truck. But everything else is pretty calculated.
We don't know what the Dallas general gas or oil rate is right now.
It's the barrel plus 5 cents. Every time they send us a bill, they send us the barrel rate that they're allowed to charge, whatever, and they add 5 cents to it, which is a less markup than the typical. And gas we're on state contract with.
Thinking about tomorrow's discussion on expenses, two things. Today is the 15th. Today is the day the governor decides whether or not to extend.
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow she decides
the 16th was extended, yeah.
whether
She
she's
decided?
aware, whether we're allowed to continue with Zoom or not.
Ah.
So,
So tomorrow night's meeting might be in person?
well, if
Or
it
tomorrow's
expires,
just the
Well, it would be,
At your discretion, right?
the last executive order extended it through March 16th, which is tomorrow.
tomorrow night.
So any changes won't be effective until the 17th.
Thursday.
And we have already advertised it as an online meeting.
Correct.
I like sitting around the table for these conversations. I find it harder in Zoom, but if it's been advertised as Zoom, it's been advertised as Zoom.
Can we zoom from here?
We know, that's why we need Teams, so that we can do them from here.
Yeah, we don't have the technology in here to.
But once we get to expenses and we talk about upgrading technology,
No, they are recorded. You could actually watch the recording probably by the time I get home, because I've gotten a couple of emails for the last few meetings, like, whoa, you watched the meeting already?
I know.
I mean, you get them up quick.
Zoom ones are easier, but this takes hours,
Okay.
because this records in 20-minute clips. So first I have to go through and I have to splice all the 20-minute clips together.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the program, it's slow, it'll tie up my computer for an hour just to do the editing.
I need that technology.
okay, what
Alright.
else do we need to cover today?
Does anybody have any other thoughts about revenues? Water, sewer, general fund, overall
Selling our
coverage?
children.
I'm not selling my kid, I only have one.
Okay.
Mine's too old to sell.
Back to revenue
Is
that's
there anything
relating to
that
the
you
village.
want to share on the revenue side of something that the boards in the past, in your experience, and I'll throw it to Jeff as well, didn't want to deal with because they just don't want to deal with? Is there a revenue issue that somebody doesn't want to touch because they don't want to annoy somebody or somebodies?
No.
I don't
I mean-
think so. The
Okay.
only revenue
Fair question.
that the board has easy control over is the fees that we charge.
Right.
And they have gone up over the years, I believe
They
some
have
of
gone
them.
up. Listen, we've talked about building permit fees.
Well, building permit fees are actually also another area of low-hanging fruit. Because right now, it is by
Square foot.
footage. It used to be by estimated cost of project, which is how the rest of the world does it. A previous building inspector found that cumbersome, so now everybody pays the same across the board. So that means someone building a giant house a giant house on Paulding has the same cost as a little tiny house on Church Street. It's regressive. The town does it by the way we used to, by cost, and I think that we should go back in that direction. So that's a possibility to think about.
It's more equitable too.
It's much more equitable, much more equitable. And something else you just said, building,
I just said permits in general.
permits in general.
I just asked the question, is there anything that nobody wants to talk about?
You know,
I'll talk about anything.
we increased parking already, like,
Oh, that's what I was gonna say.
there's been change, so previous boards have raised revenue when they can. I don't think that there's one specific thing that, other than Main Street parking, but we all know that that's, and it works, it's just taking time that
Well, that's what,
hasn't
that has
ever
to
been
be like
addressed.
the focus for you guys.
Yeah.
And also, is $1.50
On the
enough?
weekends.
It's $2 on the
It's $2 on the weekends.
Is it enough?
I think on Main Street it should be higher than on the
The lots.
spots and the lots that are down the street.
I think so too.
Main Street is the prime real estate where everybody wants to pull up and park right here, and you should pay a little bit more for that. I think we could go to 3 for Main Street. So those kinds of decisions, I think the board has to look at the plan that's been proposed and make sure that every little bit of it makes sense for what we're trying to do, and then we can move forward with
That's,
that.
I think that should be your first,
We
the
can
two of you.
present that if you want,
Yeah, I think
Main
that-
Street parking
we
is
do-
probably the easy fix
for budget,
to close the gap.
yeah.
But it's a big if, can it get done in time to impact this budget year?
Well, put it on the calendar, give us a date to present it and start talking about it, put it on an agenda, and we'll get it there.
So, to clarify, because it pertains to
Requested.
revenues, the problem with implementing Main Street parking is not actually implementing Main Street parking, it's figuring out the residential piece of the
Well-
overall plan.
The residential piece has been legislatively approved. I mean,
It's just enacting it.
it's enacting it, but you need to do that. And I think there's other issues with Main Street.
Yes, but
There are
remember
other
that,
holdups, but
remember that the recommendation of the planning committee, as part of the recommendation, they stated very clearly, this is not perfect.
right.
And it's not going to be perfect in the first move out of the gates. Everybody needs to give a little to get a little, and we have to start somewhere. So while it's not perfect, it does move us forward. I think we do our best with what we have, and then we're gonna have to learn along the way and modify.
What is the issue?
The issue
What's the
is,
central issue that's causing us not to start striping and putting the signs up?
we don't have any parking permits for people who live on Main Street, and they're losing their parking 2 days a week, and it's getting, during the most busy days of the week, and there'll be a few free spots on the side streets for them, but it's also fair game for anybody else. So if someone's shopping in Cold Spring, they can park there for free, or they can pay for parking on Main Street. So if you live on Main Street, you can't get, it's like, you might be able to get those spots if you're lucky, but those people are gonna lose their parking, and that's a big,
But those
That's
those
not my
spots
issue at
are
all.
that is it. Eliza's right. That was the big issue
It-
of
it
driving
might be-
conversation the
It
fall.
might
But
have been the conversation.
those aren't residential spaces, A, and B, to anticipate that you have a reserved spot on Main Street when you live in an apartment, it's
That's my argument.
it's nuts. I mean, we don't have a spot on Main Street for everybody who lives on Main Street.
How
And
many
you
spaces
don't
are
have
we
a
talking
right
about?
to a spot on Main Street.
Even-
We have parking in the village, it just might not be in front of your house.
Even if you gave everyone who had an apartment on Main Street a spot on Main Street, you wouldn't have enough. So, I mean, and in a lot of buildings, there's parking behind. Do they choose to use it? No, they choose to use Main Street, even when they're right behind their own building. So, moving here and taking an apartment that doesn't have parking And expecting the village to give you free parking on Main Street is not something I'm willing to do.
I mean, we're making blanketed statements, there's a lot of different scenarios, not everybody has parking in the back. Some people are old, some people have children, I don't have a
If they can
driveway,
get
I
up
don't
the
have anywhere in the
steps,
back.
their own, you
But
know.
I have no problem with parking 5 blocks away on the other side of 9D and I can walk. It's fine, you know, so like, just the way New York City, like residents who have cars figure it out, ours will figure it out and it
Yes.
will naturally iron itself out in some ways. But if we're taking parking away from one group and giving it to another, because the people who live on the side streets aren't promised
But we're not
parking on the
taking
streets
parking
either.
from anyone, you don't have parking.
If we can figure
They have
this
it
stuff
now.
out, I have, from preliminary numbers, there's 100 spots on Main Street. If we assume a 75% occupancy rate, although Main Street seems crowded, it's not realistic, at least not in the beginning, to assume it's 100% occupancy all the time. So if we assume 75% occupancy of those 100 spots, at $2 an hour on the weekends for 7 hours a day, because that was the parking committee 10 to 5, that gives us $2,100 a month in, prime. So January, February, March, April, I discounted it, and that's already in the budget. But from June to November, if we can get that, that's $2,100 a month. And that's might be low. If it goes up to $3, then it's going to be, $3,000 instead of $2,000 a month. So there's ways to increase revenue if we can figure out everything else that goes
Question.
along with it.
When you say weekends, are you factoring in like when the 4th of July is not on the weekend?
The parking,
or
I'm going off
when
of the broad.
Okay, so but are the Mondays of like Labor Day or does that?
I didn't factor in holidays.
Oh,
I
good.
just
That's
did
good.
straight
That's more.
Saturday. There's 52
that's gotta-
Saturdays and 52 Sundays.
Okay, I mean, we have to eventually make sure that they take money on those days. It's busy.
I mean,
So the meters, the meters, as I understand it, are highly flexible.
Yep, I know they are.
And
You can
can-
program them like from home, practically.
That's your job.
so what are the busiest 7 days in the world of people coming to the village to Main Street? Saturday, Sunday?
Friday,
I would
Saturday,
assume
Sunday.
Friday,
Friday's
Saturday.
probably up there as well.
Yeah.
Especially if you're gonna do like,
So you meter Friday through Sunday and holidays, would seem to make sense.
Friday would add a lot.
And how many
of-
spaces are we talking about for Main Street people who think they have a space,
Well-
roughly?
I don't know legally if we,
We cannot, under the law, this is not zoning language I'm using parking language right now. You cannot reserve residential spots in a business district under the enabling legislation. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't give residential parking permits for Main Street. It would have to be on a street that is not Main Street. This drives the challenge with the 11th Street district. 20% of the area, the 20% of the spaces in the residential parking district has to be reserved for open public parking, free zones, where anyone can have a fair chance at getting a free spot. The rest is reserved for residents. So, as Eliza said, the Main Street folks can get up early on a Saturday morning and you move your car to a free spot so you don't pay all day. You do it before visitors come and you've got your spot. It's hard to move on the weekend.
Don't move your car.
It's hard to move your car and get back in. Part of this, I think, is building out a culture shift around, just like when you live in a city, when you live in a dense area, you're not gonna be able to park in front of your building all the time. Even those of us who don't have streets and houses, I can't always park it. During the school day, I can't get near my house some days because there are teachers filling my street. So, but that doesn't mean that there aren't places to park, it just may not be your optimal parking spot. And yes, it's a challenge with unloading kids, it's a challenge to unloading groceries, but it is also a choice to live in an apartment on Main Street.
So how many spaces would you say we're talking about on the Main Street people, roughly?
I've counted how many cars are parked on Main Street at night. That's when there's no visitors, there's no shopkeepers, there's nobody extra. It's about 20% of the street, so 20 cars.
Okay,
or
so,
25 cars.
so if you found spaces for 25 cars, you almost solved the problem.
Which is what the parking planning group did with those side spots. And they reduced, instead of having it, 7 days a week, to the weekend only. Originally, we were talking about going after the whole week.
Right.
Because that was going to save the village's funds. That would be a game changer in this village. We're talking playground game changer, but that's not on the table right now because the quality of life difference to what that change 7 days a week would do to the people who do live in apartments upstairs on Main Street, or who are probably not our richest residents,
Right.
was so great when we're, reserving spaces for other residents, which doesn't look fair, so that's why we reduced it to 2 days a week.
Okay, that's fair. So if you made a deal with Haldane for the 9D lot on the weekends, Is that unreasonable?
That was tried. Dave attempted to negotiate that with Dr. Benante.
okay,
And that was not something the school was willing to do because, he didn't, actually, I should modify, he didn't propose it for residential parking, he proposed it for visitor parking.
which is
And-
different.
Well, regardless, it's a car.
Metering,
And
right?
metering it, and the feeling was, but from Haldane, that they wanted that lot available for sports events, and they didn't want families to have to be paying to be using that lot for sporting events. It's kind of up for grabs anyway. If that lot is filled at 7:30 with people going up the mountain, it's filled at 7:30 with people going up the mountain. My understanding from the conversation was that Haldane hesitated unless there, because they would have preferred an actual traffic engineer and parking engineer to have done the study to back up the request, as opposed to a group of people sitting around the table problem solving.
As I recall, when Father McSweeney was here, Loretto had a license plate that if you put it on your car, you could park in the church.
That was also, Dave also negotiated with Loretto, and this
That's
is,
diocese insurance, because I tried with valet.
last year, when this was at the heat of moving forward, he also negotiated with Loretto, and Loretto was not willing to give up
They
their
weren't
space
willing to
either.
do it.
During the week? Just
At
during the
all.
week?
I'd like to revisit the Haldane conversation, because it
Me
is a
too.
different conversation if I'm gonna put meters on there and make money on it, but I'm not gonna share it with you, school who owns the property, then I'm gonna put residents on it on the weekends, who some of which, what percentage, might already be paying school taxes. I think it's a completely different
But
conversation.
the residents can park there anyway, cause it's not,
Right.
if I need to move my car over to that Haldane lot, I can park there anytime, as far as I know.
I'm sure that framing, modifying framing would help. I think we have to have everything on the table all over
Correct.
again.
But it's worth the conversation,
It's
because
totally
we're leaving
worth
money
it.
on
Did
the
you know the
table.
price for the signs?
We're not,
Because I found.
we're talking about
I
the actual
found
parking lot on
signs,
Haldane property
like
and not 9D.
$16 a piece,
No,
$15 a
that
piece
lot
for
next to the ball field is a Haldane lot
Yes, people park there
All the time.
all the
all the
time.
time.
They do
One-
not want it metered.
No, but one of the conversations Dave had with Dr. Benatti was actually coming to an arrangement where let people park on Haldane in the school lot on weekends. And that, I think that was kind of where it went nowhere. Like that, that'd be a great fundraiser for senior class, for classes, just go out there and
Charge
charge for
parking.
parking on weekend. It's,
Better than car wash.
well, pay for your
It's
trips to,
really
your
It's
school
not
trips. as well.
environmentally good anymore.
But was the conversation
Right? You can't have a car
metered,
wash.
or was the conversation
I have to go back and look.
Yeah,
I
because
don't
I think
believe
there's
it
a
was-
big distinction between the two.
Yes.
I don't think it was metered because the conversation with Loretto was not about metering, it was about letting people park.
What the conversation about Loretto was identifying potential lot areas for people who worked on Main Street to be off Main Street and park for the day.
Right.
And where it ended up was down at the strip of land we own at Kemble, and there was some response to that among Main Street employees that, you're gonna make me walk an extra X minutes. It's like, yeah, yes, actually, just like you do in any urban
My
area, you
guys
have to
all
walk.
park down there. They all park down by the marathon.
I'll
mean-
have to find,
So in
Dave
a
did a
perfect-
presentation to Haldane,
At the school,
Last year.
board meeting.
a PowerPoint presentation, I believe. I'll see if I have that.
Yeah, if you have it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I'll have a conversation, just to rephrase the conversation.
Yeah.
So, in a perfect world, to roll out the residential parking,
2,200 a
System.
month. Is that what you said?
we need
22?
an identifying tag,
Mhm.
21.
we need signage, and we need curb painting, or how are we
You
doing?
don't have to have curb painting,
I don't
and that
think-
was one of the points that was unfinished when the proposal was put forward. There was limited conversation about, well, maybe we don't need to install all these signs, maybe we just we sub out street marking. Maybe we sub out sign installation. It never finished.
The signage, I mean, I found signs for, I think it was $15.45 if you order 40.
Does Park Mobile pay for the signs?
Is
Or
this
is
the
that
one
just
the
a
main?
They pay for Main, but they
They'll
won't
pay
pay
for
for
Main,
side
but-
streets.
There's the 11 side streets for the residential parking program.
There's already in the budget, there's a street sign line.
Yeah,
Okay.
I already gave you the numbers for that, so that's in there.
Yeah, but they were really high, like
Maybe it was $30 a sign.
Yeah,
So
I-
if you have a cheaper sign, but we want
I
them to
just-
hold up.
well, that's it, I wanna make sure that we're comparing the same
And
So
Bugsy
size.
should be
Yeah.
giving us.
Bugsy has two places that he orders signs. One in Mayapack and one in Chelsea.
He should be pricing it with his numbers.
Try to keep it in Putnam County. So.
And then
maybe we
it's
should-
chunking their time to, all right, guys,
That's a
this
big-
week, all you're doing this week is this thing.
That's a
So
big
can we
project, putting
workshop-
It is
in
a big project.
Can
the
we
big
workshop
signage on
the
11
tags?
streets.
What?
If we're not doing garbage anymore, we can do these
Right. Thing-
block
If
projects.
it's a priority, we can
Let's,
put it on the
let's
calendar.
get it on an agenda and to come up with what the wordage for the signs, the kind of tags we're gonna use, and
I think you two should put a proposal together and give it to the board to
Okay.
discuss in a workshop, and let's aim to do it ASAP.
okay,
Why don't, what's the date today?
16.
This is
15.
15th. Can we get it on, April 5th or
Sixth.
April 6th?
So you-
Just 2 weeks?
Trying to prioritize. So you have short-term rentals you wanna get on the calendar.
Well, I think
Parking,
Parking.
I think is easier,
short-term
in
rental,
my mind.
This
Well-
is
focus
an
on
easier
parking right
thing.
now. Yeah. Focus on parking first, and if April 6th,
You need a legal opinion before you can start the short-term rental, right?
right.
Yeah.
We don't need we don't have to worry about the lawyer for this.
And
Right.
this project, there have been multiple public hearings. I mean, it's gonna take presentation and education, but there has been public comment twice or three times, right?
There were two rounds and a final presentation, where it was adopted, but I don't think it was public comment, because it wasn't like,
Right, that was the blow
Are there fees for the permits for the residential?
That's part
Yes.
of what you're talking about.
Yep,
they're very, very, very,
Ridiculously.
very low. It's like,
It's
like
like
when you hear,
Are $3 a
No,
year?
when you
Or-
hear,
Right.
10.
2 years,
$10,
$3
when
for
you
2
hear
years.
Kathleen say that parking on Main Street is not free to anybody, it's the same on the side streets, I think. And if you're
Public real
getting, if you're getting parking on the street reserved for you, you should have to pay something more that's meaningful, that contributes to the cost of fixing streets in the
is it a
village.
code up change,
The ski fee schedule is separate
Okay.
from the ordinance, and so,
because down below it's $3, which is even more laughable.
So, I'm not gonna include residential permit fees in next year's budget, but I'll give you September, October, and November, if we can get parking done by
I
August 31st.
think that's fair. I think that's
We'll
fair.
just make it our
We'll
first
make it happen.
priority. That's all we're doing from now on.
About all.
That's it. I'm not really, I'm going away for Jazz
We'll put an
Fest, but
asterisk
that's
there
after
and see
that
how far we
meeting.
get before
So I'm here.
adoption.
Tough.
If you wanna come
I
over.
think we're just at a point where we have to like, we're doing it. We have to just do these things.
And actually, if you interweave, whatever the word is, in the budget process, it can also be part of the education. So
Absolutely.
Mike Armstrong used to always say there's no such thing as free parking,
That's right.
and he's right.
I was on that committee, I
Right.
know.
The book, the
So if we're
famous
not
book.
charging for Main
Donald
Street
Shute,
parking,
the
that
high cost of
means
free
the
parking.
taxpayer is subsidizing.
That's right.
In some
That's exactly
capacity.
right. They have to be hand-in-hand discussions.
Correct.
It goes back to my partnership thing. It's a partnership with the residents, the tourists. Everybody has to do their part to, so that we can afford to keep the village nice. If you want people to come and shop in your shop, and a lot of shops are now owned by residents, it's
Yeah.
not like before.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. It means that they feel comfortable and they investing in the village. But, if we're gonna keep it nice so that people wanna come here
And live here.
and live here, and because they come, they eat, they buy a house. They come, they hike, they buy a house. You have no idea how many people are celebrating anniversaries in my place that did just that. It's crazy.
That's why I live here.
That's why I live here too.
We went
I
to the
came for
Tots
lunch.
Park. Fell
I
in
was
love
just
with the
passing
place.
through.
We ate at restaurants, and we decided to buy a house. Subsequently, I
You saw
volunteered my time, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
happy to pay tax.
Don't we fall under water, clean
Is the
water?
meeting over?
I'm
Any
I'm
other-
sorry.
Have
Any
we
other
covered everything we
remarks?
need to cover?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor?
I-
Aye.
That was all.
I really wish we could do tomorrow night. I really wish we could do it at the table. It's easier.
Yeah.
I know.
I'll be honest, I can't. I
Oh,
plan
that's
through
right.
Zoom.
That's right.
I
That's
can't.
right. That's right. That's right.
If I have more notice, I can, but tomorrow I can't.
Are we still?
No.
Yeah, give me 1 second.